across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good morning. This is Talk. I'm Peter Cardwell. Thank you so much for your company. Thanks for your welcome back as well. I'm back from a couple of weeks on holiday. The Eurovision controversy. Why does Ireland hate Israel quite so much? We're going to be talking about that and three other countries that so far are boycotting Eurovision because of the Israel-Gaza war, the war on Hamas terrorists. This is something that shouldn't be in music. It's nothing to do with music. It's nothing to do with Eurovision. Yet because Israel is being included next year, the boycott continues. We're also talking about the BBC, an extraordinary row on Question Time last night where illegal migrants were in the audience. Do you think that's a good use of licence fee payers' money to have them there? Let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. We're talking about the Deputy Prime Minister and celebrity mastermind himself, David Lammy, as well, who says that Brexit could be reversed. He failed to rule out 7 times in an interview whether Brexit could be reversed. Are you worried about that? Let me know your thoughts on all of these matters today. Labour slumped to 14% in the polls as well. So much to talk about today. So many great guests. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can send me a WhatsApp voice note. You can send me a WhatsApp text message or give me a ring, all on the main number 0344 499 1000. Plenty to talk about between now and 1 o'clock here on Talk. I just want to say a huge thanks to everyone who's welcomed me back. I'm here today between now and 1 o'clock, and indeed tomorrow and Sunday in the same slot. I'm doing Drive next week, Monday and Tuesday, and then the sort of Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 10 till 1 again next week. So thanks to everybody who's just been so kind, said they missed me and welcomed me back, particularly Heather Cummings in Rich Hill, who I know is a big fan of the programme. So thank you very much to her for her loyalty, and I know that she has been watching and listening to the programme for a long time. So hello to Heather, and also a very happy birthday to Elisa in Chelmsford as well, a long-time viewer and texter who says her birthday treat is having Cardi P back on the airwaves. It's when they start referring to themselves in the third person, that's when you need to worry. Right then, let's talk about what happened on Question Time last night. An illegal migrant was in the audience. Zia Youssef is the policy chief of Reform UK, was on the panel. Daisy Cooper was there for the Lib Dems as well. Fiona Bruce, of course, the presenter. Let's have a look at what happened.
So the man in the white shirt, now I know you came over on a small boat. Am I right about that?
Yeah.
What's your response to what you're hearing? Because obviously everyone is talking about people like you.
Well, let me say something first. I just want to clear that leaving the convention doesn't just affect the migrants. It would give ordinary people one less court, to protect their rights. Even for weekend checks and the government power risk on peace settlement in Northern Ireland and damage our security cooperation. Do you think this,
I'll happily answer that question. My parents came here legally. They did not come here illegally. And look, there's a clear dividing line in British politics. If you're watching this at home and you want to vote for a party that will prioritise the interests of foreign nationals who came here illegally, or do you want to vote for a party that's going to prioritise British citizens who work hard, set their alarm clocks in the evening before going to bed and toil to pay tax money?
That is not the dividing line. That is not the dividing line in British politics right now.
Do you know how much money the British taxpayer had to pay?
There are other choices available.
Do you know how much money the British taxpayers had to pay for universal credit payments alone for foreign nationals last year? That was £10 billion.
Do you know how much an asylum seeker gets a week?
Hang on, if you're talking, no one can hear.
£49 a week. £49 a week. This is what this man wants to take off you.
British taxpayers will be spending half the forecast defence budget on universal credit alone for foreign nationals. There's nothing about that that's remotely acceptable, and I'm sorry, we will stick up for British citizens who paid their taxes.
Zia Youssef there, the policy chief of Reform UK. We heard Daisy Cooper's voice there as well, the deputy leader of the Liberal Democrats, saying the Liberal Democrats apparently speak for the silent majority, while their polling rating would not attest to that. It's very interesting, Zach Polanski as well, the leader of the Green Party, talking there as well, and an illegal migrant in the audience. The BBC has said that as immigration continues to be a primary concern for people in the UK, Question Time held a special episode in Dover with panellists from across the political spectrum and a local audience with a range of views and experiences. Over 20 audience members asked questions and contributed to the debate, including 2 people with direct experience of the asylum system in the UK who've been granted refugee status. Let's speak to James Healy now. He is the Deputy Political Editor of The Spectator. James, this is clearly a big controversy that these illegal migrants were even given a voice on Question Time. What do you think about what Reform UK in the form of Zia Youssef has been saying?
Well, I think they're very consistent. I mean, it's always that thing, isn't it, about politics as a theory, policies as a sort of ideal, as a theoretical notion, coming up with the reality of people's lives. And Zia Youssef stood his ground. He made the point. He didn't try and duck around and fudge it. He said, look, if you've broken the law, you will go back. And I think that that is something that was quite striking. It was quite an arresting moment of TV. You obviously saw the sort of counter-reaction from the other more liberal-minded panellists on immigration, the Lib Dems and the Greens, etc. But I thought it was a good moment of television, and I think that it's going to be a precursor to some of the battles we see over the next couple of years.
Is it right that people who arrived in this country illegally were given a voice on the BBC on such a... I mean, it is the most watched political programme in Britain?
I think they should have a voice in the sense that they are already here using the public services, part of this country, and I think that it makes... We shouldn't duck the public policy debate. I mean, I think that you can say they shouldn't be here illegally, etc. But the point is they are here, and what are we going to do about that? And now some people who think we should give them an amnesty, other people think they should go back. And I'm one of those people who backs debate and thinks that someone like Zia Youssef can more than stand their ground. And I think he handled himself very well, which is why he's one of Reform's best communicators.
Speaking of things that are going to raise debate in this country, something that may not have come out of the blue to you, James Healy, is that Liz Truss is going to be back on our screen. She's having her own programme now. Let's have a look at her little promo. This is the former Prime Minister Liz Truss, who's launching her own online show.
2022, I was deposed from the office of Prime Minister of Great Britain. People had decided her time was up. I tried to save our country from the doom loop it is now in.
We set out a vision for a low-tax, high-growth economy that would take advantage of the freedoms of Brexit.
I was blamed for a market crisis that was not my fault. The deep state and their allies in the media and politics tried to destroy me because I challenged their decades-long failure. Now I'm back. I will expose the people who brought me down. I will take on the deep state. I will tell the truth about what is happening in our country and across the West. Tune in to the Liz Truss Show every Friday. Tune in to the counter-revolution.
I mean, I'm all for media plurality, James, but will you be tuning in to the counter-revolution?
I very much will. I can't wait. First episode, Britain's shortest serving Prime Minister. I'm very much keen. I've seen the press release and it's full of very bombastic Liz quotes talking about taken down by the deep state. Now I'm back. And look, this is something she's been very much working on all summer. And as a biographer, it only makes sense for me to tune in.
Did she go away? I mean, she says she's back. I've no real sense that Liz Truss went anywhere, really. I've heard quite a lot from her. And she's sort of saying the same things. Her book was called, I know your book was called Out of the Blue. It's a very, very good book, written with Harry Cole, who, of course, is saving the West in America. But I just wonder, from your perspective, I mean, she wrote a book called 10 Years to Save the West. I'm going to make a prediction that in 10 years' time, the West will still be here. I mean, has she got things to say that we don't know already?
I am not sure what is going to be that radical about what she's saying. I think there's a merit in lots of her points, things such as the failures of British institutions, but there is already a sort of well-saturated market out there. So, I mean, I'll be interested to see how the show keeps developing. As you know, Peter, the challenge of all programmes is to kind of find something new and different angle. So I'll be interested to see whether not just the West, but whether the TV show will be going in 10 years or so.
I've just been sent something that I want a comment on. Sorry to ambush you, James, but I've just been sent something by a former senior person in number 10 under Keir Starmer, which is just absolutely hilarious. Can I ask, actually I'm going to find it in The Guardian because it's so good. So there's all this speculation at the moment that there are going to be all these new Labour peers, and people like the former communications chief Matthew Doyle and people like that are being touted as new peers. The Guardian has not only a prediction but also a photograph of someone who has been touted as a new peer, who's Sue Gray, who is actually already a member of the House of Lords. I mean, it's just brilliant.
Well, I'm not sure we can give her more gongs and honours. I mean, I know they're getting rid of her entries. Maybe make her a Viscountess, for instance, or I think maybe there could be a sort of another honour bestowed on her. But
yeah, Duchess, clearly.
Duchess, clearly, absolutely right, sort of Lady Grantham. But I mean, I love, Peter, which is that Sue Gray took in what it might call a sort of one last pop at Keir Starmer as her title, Tottenham, Baroness Grey of Tottenham, and of course he is a lifelong Arsenal fan.
That's right.
So maybe I'm reading too much into that, but no, she's already there voting on the Lords. And look, Labour said in opposition they were going to stuff the Lords. There's a few more peers getting in there to win those votes.
Speaking of Labour, slumping in support to 14% in the latest poll, David Lammy, the mastermind himself, talking about Brexit and denying on a podcast that he would actually that Brexit may not be reversed. What do you make of that?
Well, I think that the question is, will Labour push for this, and should they push for it? I think there'll be a few kind of tweaks. Nick Thomas-Symonds is one of the more effective ministers. He's been working behind the scenes on a lot of stuff, but I think it'll be more to do with sort of trade checks and at the most a customs union rather than full fat rejoin. I think that the key defining moment of this year, Peter, was the welfare rebellion. That completely shot the government's authority, and I think that you probably get enough of a minority of Labour backbenchers going, is this a good idea? My seat voted for leave, so probably kill the idea. So I think on this one, David Lammy has perhaps stumbled on the truth, a novelty, but one we should enjoy.
James, as always, thank you. That's James Heal, who's the Deputy Political Editor of The Spectator. Always good to talk to him and get his views on things. What do you think of all that he said? Liz Truss coming back with her new show. What about the fact that the Question Time had 2 illegal migrants on it, although they've been granted refugee status? Chris is in Manchester and has given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. That's the number you can ring to, or send me a voice note on that. Chris, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say this morning?
Yes, good morning, Peter.
Morning.
Just regarding Question Time last night, I didn't have an issue with the 2 migrant contributors, particularly the first one, who was very open, very honest, mentioned that he'd sought asylum in a number of different countries. The second individual, I wasn't quite so convinced because he seemed to be reading from his mobile phone. However, my main issue last night was with the audience reaction. Now, my understanding is that the audience is supposed to be drawn as a cross-section of opinion.
Yes.
And yet the Greens and the Liberal Democrats, who are, generally speaking, low down in public opinion at the moment when compared to the main, certainly compared to Reform.
Certainly compared to Reform. They're doing well around 16, 17 percentage points. But you're right, they're substantively lower than the Reform support in this country, which is hovering around about 29 percentage points at the moment.
Yeah, but the reaction, particularly to Polanski when he was coming out with his diatribe about effectively an open door policy that the Greens have, although he wouldn't admit it, Zia Youssef was trying to press him on that and trying to get him to admit that, but he wouldn't admit it openly. But we know that that's their policy. And yet the audience reaction to his contribution seemed to be very supportive. I find that hard to believe, and it just reinforces my belief that the audiences on Question Time are rigged.
Do you know, I think the truth is kind of somewhere in the middle. I used to work in Question Time. I was senior producer in Question Time when I was about 27. And it's interesting, Chris, because there's a whole team behind the scenes. There's a very good woman, sadly no longer with us, called Ali, who put the audience together. And she, no matter what effort she put in, she always got criticism that the audiences were biased. I think there is some truth in that I'm not sure people always told her and her team the truth about their political views. I also think that in general, audiences and people on the left are generally a bit more vocal and more willing to put their point across, because we know that on the right, I mean, we have loads of brilliant viewers, listeners and callers. You're one of them, Chris. But often people who have views on the right are perhaps less willing to put them across. Do you think there's something in that, perhaps?
I certainly think there's some truth in the idea of shy Tories, and that in general opinion tends to underestimate support for the right and overestimate support for the left. But I'll just give you an anecdote. I actually went on Question Time in Stockport, my hometown, about 3 months ago. I'd been previously on the programme and I got in very late and I didn't get a very good spot, so I was determined to try and get somewhere near the front or get a decent position. I was probably one of the first of about half a dozen people into the auditorium. When I got into there was the auditorium was already about a third filled with individuals, and it's amazing that a number of those individuals were all asked to contribute. Now, that may be a coincidence. I'm not a conspiracy theorist.
No, well, I know from working on the programme what they do. Just so what they do is they select the literally. What happens is, I'm not denying anything you're saying, Chris, but what happens is, people submit questions. They literally put them in piles, and the biggest pile is about, let's say, immigration last night, and they pick a question or two questions from that, and then they go to the next pile. I mean, the editor sort of puts them out and selects them. Also, what they do, I mean, I actually, as a 16-year-old, asked a question on Question Time way back in the day, and they bring the questioners in first, so they're dotted around the audience, just so they're not sitting in the same place the whole time, and the cameras can get the different angles and stuff. So there is a bit of production involved with it. But listen, I think there are a lot of audiences of a lot of programmes that could be better balanced. The problem, I suppose, is when you make it, sorry, this is all a bit maybe inside TV, but it's when you make it kind of too much, as it were, scientific. Like, I remember I worked on the BBC's prime ministerial debate back in 2010. Again, that was David Dimbleby talking to Gordon Brown and Nick Clegg, remember him, and David Cameron, and they had a polling company say, right, we're going to have 200 people in the audience. We're literally going to have, if a political party has 25% in the polls, we're literally going to have 50 people in the audience representing that 25%, whether they speak or not. So sometimes it's not the most scientific process, Chris, but I know what you mean. As a licence fee payer, and I'm one too, you want an audience that reflects the country and reflects the polls that are there.
Yeah, I didn't hear hardly a word of support for Zia Youssef. Now, I appreciate he's quite an abrasive, quite an abrupt, quite a forthright character, but so are many people. And he was just shouted down by the other panellists, and to a certain extent by Fiona Bruce. And I thought it was outrageous, the manner in which he was treated, and the manner in which the views of the more right-thinking members of the panel were treated.
Okay, Chris, listen, thanks for that. I appreciate that. Give me another ring sometime. Amanda says, the BBC disgusts me. Having an illegal immigrant in their Question Time audience reading from a script is beyond the pale. And Liam says, hi Peter, I've missed you. Thank you, Liam. No more time off, please, unless you coordinate with me first. Question Time is a disgrace. I see why they did it, but why do I have to listen to someone discussing government policy who broke into the country? I don't feel sorry for him like they wanted, so it didn't work, BBC, says Liam. What do you think of all of this? 0344 499 1000. We're going to talk about the celebrity mastermind himself and Deputy Prime Minister David Lammy. He's broken ranks on Brexit, suggesting that rejoining the EU customs union would boost economic growth. Someone who is against that is Mark Littlewood. He's also BFFs with Liz Truss. We'll ask his opinion on her new show as well. I want your opinion too. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you so much to everybody who has been in touch, including about the BBC. Rob says, how come the illegal migrant concentrated on our political system first? He was a plant. If it is a true asylum seeker, he would have been more concerned about refugee rights, not ours. Gary from Birmingham says, that immigrant was obviously a plant because Fiona Bruce knew who he was and his story. Brad in Cambridge says, welcome back, Peter. You've been missed. Thank you, Brad. The BBC has gone too far this time, but my fear is that the changes in direction of this country is so set now that we will never reverse it. And Teresa says, I watched Question Time last night. Oh my goodness, I didn't know where they got this audience from. I think they must have bussed them in. It was so far left, it was untrue. And I have to say, even when they tried to backseat it into a corner, he held his own with utter dignity. By the way, welcome back, Teresa. So thank you for all of those messages. Let's talk now about David Lammy, the Deputy Prime Minister, of course. And he has been talking to a podcast, the News Agents, talking about how he thinks rejoining the customs union could be a good thing. 7 times he was asked if Brexit would be reversed. 7 times he didn't give a clear answer about whether it would or not. And this is a big fear that many people have, that Keir Starmer and his deputy David Lammy will betray what people voted for democratically nearly 10 years ago. Let's just take a look at what happened.
Our future is inextricably linked to the European Union, and part of the customs union. And we should be working deliberately over time to be closer. That's my view.
Would you like to see us in a customs union or a single market?
That journey of travel to me is self-evident.
So the question, customs union?
That is not currently
Would you welcome
our policy. That's not currently where we are.
But should it be?
But you can see countries like Turkey with a customs union seemingly benefiting and seeing growth in their economy.
Well, I think that's pretty clear what he thinks versus what government policy actually is. If I was Keir Starmer, I'd have my head in my hands. Unless, of course, he agrees with him. Well, Mark Littlewood is the director of the Popcorns, Popular Conservatism. Mark, what do you make of this? Because so many people will worry about a Brexit betrayal.
Yes, look, good morning, Peter.
Morning.
It's obvious that David Lammy's gone off the reservation yet again. He clearly, you can even see the sort of the wheels whirring behind his eyes as he's wondering how to answer these questions and to give his honest view or whatever the Labour government's line is. He does say that the Labour government's line isn't presently to rejoin the customs union, but there is a lot of concern that the Labour government, in another betrayal, another breach of their manifesto commitment, because they were pretty clear we're not going to touch Brexit at the last election, is interested in moving in this direction. The customs union was really the key point that David Lammy got across there, but he was also talking generically about we need to move closer to the EU. We're inextricably linked. Well, that's vague language, but it's quite clear what the direction of travel is. And in my view, really, EU membership amounted to 2 things, the customs union and the single market. If you're thinking of rejoining either or both, you may as well consider that you are rejoining the EU. And if we've decided to leave the EU, which the public did, and it took our political elite an age to actually implement, you've got to use the freedoms it gives you from being outside. You've got to cut better trade deals with the rest of the world. You've got to cut your own regulations.
Do you think Lammy wants to use those? Do you think Lammy wants to use those freedoms, Mark? Do you think he says, right, we've had Brexit, we have all this new, all these new opportunities, we have all these ideas that we can do, trade deals, for example, as Liz Truss signed many of them. We'll talk about her in a second. I mean, do you think he sees that opportunity, or does he just see it as this was a huge, dreadful mistake in his view? Therefore, we've got to do all we can to ameliorate this, to make it less bad in his view.
It seems to me, Peter, it's clearly the latter, and that is the mainstream view on the government benches, that Brexit was an absolutely horrific mistake in their minds. And if only we'd stayed in the EU, the economy would be ticking along very nicely. There's no real economic data to back that up. Some wild claims are made about how the British economy would be a lot bigger if we'd stayed in. But if you track the British economy and the French and German economy over the last 15 years, you'll see that they're in lockstep both before Brexit and after. Actually, one of the remarkable things is that Brexit's had such limited impact on either side, either a boost to productivity or a fall off in productivity. But I think that's in large part because we have not deployed those freedoms. And I think a good number of Labour ministers would prefer we didn't even have those freedoms. Let's leave trade and regulation and what tariffs we have to the EU. I think that would be a great mistake. I think it would be a betrayal of Brexit, but it would also be a failure to seize an opportunity in getting better deals with other parts of the world that are growing rather than the EU, which is shrinking.
You're the director of popular conservatism. Let's talk about a conservative who perhaps wasn't popular, was so unpopular that she stopped being prime minister. She says that she was deposed by the deep state. This is what Liz Truss has been saying as she launches a new YouTube show.
In 2022, I was deposed from the office of Prime Minister of Great Britain.
People had decided her time was up.
I tried to save our country from the doom loop it is now in.
We set out a vision for a low-tax, high-growth economy that would take advantage of the freedoms of Brexit.
I was blamed for a market crisis that was not my fault. The deep state and their allies in the media and politics tried to destroy me because I challenged their decades-long failure. Now I'm back. I will expose the people who brought me down. I will take on the deep state. I will tell the truth about what is happening in our country and across the West. Tune in to the Liz Truss Show every Friday. Tune in to the counter-revolution.
Will you be tuning in to the counter-revolution, Mark?
Oh, yeah, unmissable. I know Liz very well, so I watch it with intrigue and probably a certain degree of support.
Do you think it's credible for her to say things like the deep state got her out and that, you know, she was blamed for a market crisis that wasn't her fault? I mean, it was her fault.
Well, I mean, it's interesting that. And I think on the face of it, Peter, people tend to say, look, Liz Truss was there. She was only there a few weeks. Everything went sideways. It must be her fault. And I wouldn't doubt that she could have executed some of her policies more deftly. She didn't take the Conservative Parliamentary Party with her, or I think that would have been very difficult. But the Bank of England, in its own assessment of market turmoil in the autumn of 2022, concluded in its own report that 2/3 of the market turmoil was down to the behaviour of the Bank of England. And I think typically if somebody puts their hand in the air and confesses to 2/3 of things being their fault, it's usually a bit higher than that. And I think the problem with the blob, the deep state, the establishment, whatever you want to call it, is they don't seem to take the rap when things go wrong.
And guilt yields, I mean,
it's their fault. Who's resigned?
And it's a very good point to make. And also, you know, gilt yields are higher now than they were even when the cost of government borrowing higher now than even it was when she was Prime Minister. Mark, listen, thank you very much for your contribution this morning. Always good to talk to you. That's Mark Littlewood there, Director of Popular Conservatism. Shirley has been in touch with a voice note. Dead easy to send me a voice note. Do it through WhatsApp. 0344 499 1000. This is what Shirley has to say.
I think that Liz Truss has a lot of bad press. There are people who don't even have an O-level in maths are shouting, oh, she wrecked the economy. She was in number 10 for literally 5 minutes, and part of that was taken up with the death of the late Queen. She didn't have a chance. And yet the old Chancellor that we've got now, Rachel Thieves, she's getting away with literally wrecking this country.
Thanks, Shirley. I mean, I don't entirely agree with you. I think Liz Truss does have a very serious case to answer in regard to the major market turmoil that happened, the huge increase in gilt yields. And Kwasi Kwarteng, I will say to my dying day, is the worst Chancellor this country has ever had. He said in an interview, you know, there's more to come, and that caused absolutely huge turmoil and controversy and many problems. There are many problems and many people still paying the price today with their mortgages. So Shirley, I can't agree with everything you say. Has Liz Truss got a bad rap? Yes. Does she deserve it? To some degree, yes. Are there others that are responsible for the turmoil that happened? Yes, there are, as Mark was correctly pointing out there. What do you think about all this? Maybe you think I'm totally wrong about this, and that's fine, because on my programmes we disagree without being disagreeable. We'll do it today, we'll do it tomorrow and Sunday between 10 and 1 as well, and I'm very happy to talk to anybody, whether you agree with me or disagree with me. 0344 499 1000. One thing I definitely disagree with is Ireland's stance, and the stance of another few countries as well, Spain, Slovenia, the Netherlands, and more to come as well, in boycotting the Eurovision Song Contest, the sort of carnival of camp that has become incredibly political, especially because of the participation of Israel. Now, this is something that they're not happy about. The European Broadcasting Union has said that it's going ahead and Israel will take part. We'll go live to Dublin next to talk about why Ireland hates Israel. Stay with us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
So breaking news now on Talk, and that is that all flights have been halted at Edinburgh Airport due to an IT issue affecting its air traffic control provider. Teams are working on the issue and will resolve it as soon as possible. Edinburgh Trams also notified passengers, if you're travelling with us to Edinburgh Airport, they said please be aware flights are not currently operating. There are 43,000 passengers per day who use Edinburgh Airport, so they'll be affected by the breaking news that all flights have been halted from Edinburgh Airport due to an IT issue. We'll bring you more on that as we get it. Thank you to everybody who's just been so lovely, kind of welcoming me back. I should go away more often, including Nat in Tel Aviv, who says, it's Christmas Day with you back. I'll not read out too many more of these, otherwise my head will explode. She says, I'm not sure I've ever missed a man more. Liz Truss, on the other hand, not so much. Nat is in Tel Aviv, and it is Israel that we're going to talk about now, in fact, because 4 nations so far have pulled out of Eurovision after Israel has been allowed to compete. They've been in the competition for some years now. We remember Dana Internacional winning with Viva la Diva. Ireland, Spain, Slovenia and the Netherlands have withdrawn from next year's event in protest. In fact, RTE, the national broadcaster in Ireland, have sent out this extraordinary statement about it, talking about the war in Gaza, saying it would be unconscionable, in their view, for Israel to take part in the contest. And of course, RTE, like the BBC, is meant to be impartial and is paid for by a kind of a licence fee. Let's talk to Michael Murphy now. He's a journalist for The Telegraph. And Michael, I know you've been covering another controversy with Dublin City Council recently, wanting to rename a park which had been named after the former President of Israel, an Irishman, Chaim Herzog. Just talk us through why Ireland hates Israel so much.
Well, Peter, thank you for having me. I think we should be careful of, ascribing the views of certain Irish people and certainly the national broadcaster RTE to the population writ large. I think
it's not all the population of Ireland. There are some brilliant advocates for Israel. People like Rachel Moselle is fantastic. Alan Shatter, former government minister. They're really, really good advocates. But there is an awful lot of anti-Israel Semitism in Ireland.
Well, one thing I thought was interesting was in 2024, Israel actually got 10 points in the popular vote in Ireland for Eurovision, but on the judge panel it got 0. And so I think there is a split between what you might call a rather noisy activist class who are perhaps overrepresented in the national conversation and in the halls of RTE and indeed government, who are very effective at lobbying the government and lobbying for anti-Israel positions. But I suspect that actually there's a large sort of reservoir in Ireland of sympathy for Israel.
I certainly hope that's the case, but those people have not been making their voice heard nearly as much as they should have. With RTE's statement, I mean, I find it astonishing for a supposedly impartial news organisation paid for by a form of licence fee to say that it would be unconscionable for Israel to take part in a song contest. What do you make of that, Michael?
I think it's an exercise in extreme vanity. I mean, RTE, what does RTE hope to accomplish by this? Do they think there's going to be an aide somewhere in Jerusalem sweating as he goes to break the news to Benjamin Netanyahu?
Sure, he's quaking in his boots.
That he's lost, that Ireland is going to cut its nose to spite its face and not take part in Eurovision. And that's going to bring about some kind of, end to the war in Gaza? I don't think so. I think this is an exercise in posturing and a very ostentatious exercise in self-harm, really, for Ireland. And also, I might just add, a lot of the countries, Spain, Slovenia, the Netherlands, who have taken part in this boycott, haven't done too well in Eurovision in recent years. I think the last time Spain won was in 1969. And so, I suspect that part of this is maybe a bit of sour grapes as well.
Yeah, it's interesting, and certainly the BBC has not saying very much about it, not talking about how it voted in this, because there was a vote. We support the collective decision made by members of the European Broadcasting Union. This is about enforcing the rules of the European Broadcasting Union and it being inclusive, says the BBC. Before the meeting, the BBC had said Eurovision has never been about politics. I mean, that is demonstrably nonsense. I wonder as well, from your knowledge of Ireland, if you could just take us through this controversy over the last few days about the park, the Chaim Herzog Park.
Yeah, so this proposal to rename Herzog Park, which, as you say, is after Chaim Herzog, who was the president of Israel, born in Belfast, then raised in Dublin near Rathgar, where the park is situated. This has been in the works for several years, and it's just come to the fore now, where the council was attempting to push through a vote on the decision. The government was very quick to warn the council on Monday that this would actually be an illegal move and that they needed to hold a plebiscite if they wanted to change the name. Now, they were essentially they wanted to change it to something more pro-Palestinian. One of the suggestions that was floating around was to change it to Free Palestine Park. Now, it's again, I think, a sort of category error to think that by unpersoning, as it were, an Irish Jew who died in 1997 for the actions of a government he never lived to see is some kind of remedy or sensible response to Israel's war in Gaza. I just think is extremely small-minded and says more about the people sitting on Dublin City Council than it does about Israel.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Listen, thank you for that analysis. That's Michael Murphy there, journalist for The Telegraph. I appreciate him joining us. I want to speak to Grace in London, who's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Grace, what do you make of this?
Yeah, I do watch Eurovision. As much as it's tacky and silly, it's just fun. And
there's nothing wrong with it as a contest. It's not my cup of tea, but I don't see why the actions of a government and a military should have anything to do with representing a country in music.
Precisely. Well, I mean, ironically, I and some other people do believe in a particular bloke from Israel who did offer to take upon himself the punishment for what other people had done wrong. But I don't think that we, in reverse, should seek to put blame upon a whole group of people for what Benjamin Netanyahu has done wrong. It's not the fault of the people of Israel that their government is doing what they're doing, and obviously some people agree with what they're doing.
Of course, and I was in Israel recently, a couple of months ago, and I was absolutely 3 months ago now actually, and it was really interesting to see how much anti-Netanyahu sentiment there was there. Obviously, many people support what he does. He is democratically elected and so on, but there are lots of protests, lots of hostage families really not happy with him. And I think what so much of the West forgets, Grace, is that Israel, unlike the many countries, the dozens of countries that surround it, is a democracy. And the actions of it's like saying we're going to say the England football team can't play somewhere because all of you, every single person there in the UK agrees with every single thing that Keir Starmer does and says. I mean, it's nonsense.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was alluding to Jesus, who took action on himself.
I know you are.
I think that what we often want to do is to make ourselves feel like we ourselves are morally upright just by getting angry with other people. And I think that the impetus from some of the people who are protesting furiously against Israel is that they feel like they're morally righteous by being very, very angry, but they're not really actually helping people who are in need. They're not really helping.
It's about them. It's about them. It's not about the people who are suffering, and there are people suffering in the Palestinian territories. Of course there are. There is really suffering as well, but it's not about them. It's about making those people feel better. Grace, great call as always. Thank you very much indeed. That's Grace in London there. We're going to talk about Russia next. Mary Dejevsky is going to be with us, and there's a deal to give a frozen £8 billion from Russia to Ukraine. We're also going to talk about something that so few people in the Western media, so little of the mainstream media will ever talk about, which is how completely and utterly, from top to bottom, corrupt so much of Ukrainian society and government is. It's one of the most corrupt countries in the world. But of course, if we were to believe every single thing pumped out by the mainstream media in the last few years, it would be that, speaking of Jesus, Zelensky is Jesus. Well, guess what? He's not. A lot of the people around him have had to resign because of corruption scandal. We're going to go through all of that with Mary Dejevsky in a second. We'll take some of your calls as well. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks to everybody who's been in touch. We're going to get to some calls in a minute. Just briefly, I want to play a voice note from Elisa in Chelmsford on the Israel Eurovision controversy.
Good morning, Peter. The best answer that Israel can give to all those anti-Semites who want to boycott Israel in the Eurovision Song Contest is to produce a fantastic song and for all of us to vote Israel to win.
Well, I voted Israel certainly in the last Eurovision Song Contest. I will be doing so this year as well, no matter what the song is like, whether it's a stinker or whether it's soaring and wonderful. Elisa, thanks for your message, and I know it's your birthday today, so a very happy birthday to you. We can celebrate as well because Mary Tchaikovsky is on the programme, one of my favourite guests. This is because of hopes to end the conflict in Ukraine dashed last night after Putin said there were points he could not compromise on. The UK is exploring how to transfer more than £8 billion of Russian assets frozen in Britain to support Ukraine. This would be in addition to the EU's plans to unlock £79 billion of frozen Russian assets. Mary, it's a wee while since we've spoken. Where are we in all of this?
It is so hard to follow. I cannot tell you how many hours I have spent trying to figure out where we are. And every day produces something new and indeed a new venue. You know, one weekend people are gathering Geneva. At the moment, they seem to be commuting between Kiev and Miami and Moscow and Miami. It's very difficult. I think that yes, Russia has said, you know, there are red lines which it's not prepared to cross, which has always been its position. And it's not going to settle for, say, anything which leaves open the possibility of Ukraine being anything other than a neutral country. You know, that is probably the absolute precondition. And then there's the territorial issue about Russia keeping the land that it currently occupies, plus a bit more that it doesn't currently occupy, which you would have thought would maybe pave the way for a bit of negotiation. But there's it does seem to me that talks, not only have talks been accelerating, but the status and calibre of the people involved is now completely different from how it was, say, 2-3 months ago.
But there were such high hopes in Alaska, and Trump said he felt essentially betrayed by Putin. There were all these thoughts that there would be a further meeting between Trump and Putin, and perhaps even between Zelensky and Putin. Did we all get a bit too excited about that? And is this process actually advancing quite quickly, even though it may appear that it's taking longer than it was originally intended to, Mary?
Well, I mean, yes, I think we all did get excited about Anchorage, and it was very interesting, and it was comparatively early, and it in the Trump second term, and it was. You know, professional diplomats will say, well, it was bound to fail because it wasn't prepared properly. I don't think that's really a factor in Trump diplomacy. The Russians take a different view of Anchorage. They say that they went and the meeting actually didn't turn out how they'd expected, that Trump went back on various undertakings he'd given. I don't know how any of that is true. The two things that I think are maybe a bit different now. One of them is obviously the security situation in Ukraine and the difficulty it has in mobilizing any more forces to fight. The other thing is that you've now got very high-level military representatives in every single delegation on the part of the United States, on the part of Kiev, and on the part of Moscow. And I think that if people are looking at the military equation, what's happening on the ground, that's a much more serious, much more practical approach, which does, to me at least, suggest a degree of seriousness on everybody's part.
There's no doubt in my mind that Vladimir Putin is a bad man. He's someone who is a murderous dictator who has invaded a sovereign country. The point, though, within all that is that so many people, and you're the absolute master/mistress of nuance when it comes to dealing with this situation in a way that so few people are. I wonder, are we too quickly going for Putin, evil villain, Vladimir Zelensky, marvellous, you know, whiter than white, sort of Jesus-like character, he must be the goodie if Putin is the baddie, when actually we're seeing massive corruption and a big corruption scandal in the last few days, which some of our viewers and listeners might not know very much about. I wonder if you could just explain a little bit about that to us and the effect it will have on Zelensky. He's lost his chief of staff, for example, who has resigned in this corruption scandal.
Yes, I mean, there have been various rumblings about corruption ever since the start of the war, and the initial situation was that, you know, a lot of people Western business people who've worked in Ukraine and in Russia said that even before the war, in the sort of, you know, the notorious immediate post-Soviet period, Ukraine was actually more corrupt than Russia was in various ways. And one of the things that Putin did was basically disarm the oligarchs in Russia. And it was something that Zelensky said he wanted to do when he was elected in Ukraine, but he never really got the time to do it. So Ukraine was a much more sort of oligarchs had political sway in Ukraine in a way that they'd lost in Russia. So that's one thing. The current scandal is to do with the energy sector, where very high-level officials were accused by something called the Independent Office of Anti-Corruption. They were accused of skimming vast amounts of money from Western contributions made to keep the Ukrainian energy sector going. And of course, this is sensitive for two particular reasons. One of them, obviously, in the sense that there were high-level people close to Zelensky in his administration. This, I have to say, this hasn't touched or hasn't yet touched Zelensky himself, but it was people very high up in his circle. The other thing was that being the energy sector and the fact that this is the sector that Russia's been aiming at in recent months in the advance of winter, and Kiev and other cities are suffering power cuts as a result. The last thing that Ukrainian people and Ukrainian morale needs is to hear that members of its own administration have been skimming off money for their own enrichment.
Absolutely, Mary. Listen,
from the energy sector.
As always, thank you, Mary. Mary Dejevsky there, who is a columnist for The Independent, doyen of commentary about Eastern Europe, in my opinion. David in Exeter may have a different opinion. 0344 499 1000 is the number he has called. David, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
So just picking up, Peter, on what you were discussing with Mark Littlewood on the Lammy's comments about going back into customs union. The critical thing, taken in context of the war in Europe now, really is the defence and security situation and what that means with NATO, and particularly, this is the key bit where people get offside completely with Brexit, is European Defence and Security Union. Now, as a basis for anybody to sort of get to grips with this, because there's a bit of chatter and traffic about paying into Ursula's defence fund at the moment, but what that is, that's the fund for procurement for defence union. What people have to understand is defence and security were not included in Brexit, and they were not included in the referendum. Nobody got to know about it. It was all kept very, very sweetly quiet and separate, and it was agreed by all the political parties. much to the consternance of all of our senior military officers who wanted it on the debate, but it was blocked because it was already partway agreed through the Blair regime and the Cameron regime. But what people have to understand now is, in the context of war, all that's sort of gone by. Whether we go into the customs union or don't go into the customs union, the big issue now is what happens with a US-backed security guarantee in NATO, or whether it's European Defence Union. You can see Europe hedging its bets in case in case we have a situation where America is not there.
Yeah.
And Europe has to paddle its own canoe. Now, where we're concerned nationally, if we look at our current national status, for some time, and it's over 10 years at least, our own military officers have been saying our military isn't up to the job currently, and it's properly in a dire state now because the Labour government won't increase funding.
Okay.
So what we need to consider is our defence and security position nationally, whether we're either in NATO or go it alone, or whether we're in the EU Defence Union.
Okay.
Labour are not pushing against officer advice to fund and support defence.
Okay, David, we've got to leave it there because we've been beaten by the news. But listen, thank you for those points. Really appreciate them. Keep them coming in, and we'll get more calls on the air in the next hour. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, it's just gone 11 o'clock. I'm Peter Cardwell. This is Talk. Thank you so much for your company. It's a big day. There's a lot to talk about. I want your views on all of it. The Question Time controversy at the BBC. 2 people who arrived in this country illegally are given a voice on that programme. What do you think about that? They spoke to panellists, including Zia Youssef. We'll have a look at that again in a minute. He is the policy chief of Reform UK. This is, as the government says, it doesn't know how many illegal migrants are in Britain. It's still still unknown. Ministers lack the basic data to track who is here, according to experts. We'll speak to one of them, Tony Smith, the former head of the UK Border Force, in just a second. Also, Liz Truss, the former Prime Minister, is putting her own programme out now. Will you be watching it? We'll talk as well about the Eurovision Song Contest and the fact that Ireland, Spain, Slovenia and other countries as well, the Netherlands, are saying that they will boycott the competition. Lots of people getting in touch about that. As always, between now and 1 o'clock, I want your views on any topic we're discussing or anything you think we should be discussing here on Talk. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can send me a voice note. You can send me a WhatsApp text message or give me a ring, all in the main number 0344 499 1000. You can also tweet me at talkTV or follow me at Peter Cardwell as well. Lots to discuss between now and 1 o'clock when I get your voice on the air. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us here on Talk. Eurovision and broadcasters like the BBC seem to be the big issue today. Amanda in London says respect to Eurovision for including Israel in what is supposed to be a friendly, non-political song contest. Sue says as the Eurovision Song Contest is not achieving its original objective, in fact the opposite, it is time to bin it. And the BBC as well, lots of people getting in touch about this controversy. I'll read out some more messages in a minute about what happened on Question Time last night. You're going to hear a number of voices, including a would-be asylum seeker. In fact, he's been granted refugee status. He arrived in this country illegally. He puts a question. Zia Youssef, who's the policy chief of Reform UK, he was on the panel. He responded. You'll hear Fiona Bruce's voice as well, the broadcaster, who is the chairwoman of Question Time. You'll also hear Zach Polanski, who was on the panel, the Green Party leader, and Daisy Cooper, who is the deputy leader of the Liberal Democrats. It was an extraordinary programme last night, very controversial, lots of people getting in touch about it. Let me know what you think. Let's have a look at what happened during Question Time last night on the BBC.
So the man in the white shirt, now I know you came over on a small boat. Am I right about that?
Yeah.
What's your response to what you're hearing? Because obviously everyone is talking about people like you.
Well, let me say something first. I just want to clear that leaving the convention doesn't just affect the migrants. It would give ordinary people one less court, less court to protect their rights. Even for weekend checks and the government power risk on peace settlement in Northern Ireland and damage our security cooperation. Do you think this,
I'll happily answer that question. My parents came here legally. They did not come here illegally. And look, there's a clear dividing line in British politics. If you're watching this at home and you want to vote for a party that will prioritise the interests of foreign nationals who came here illegally, or do you want to vote for a party that's going to prioritise British citizens who work hard, set their alarm clocks in the evening before going to bed and toil to pay tax money?
That is not the dividing line. That is not the dividing line in British politics right now.
Do you know how much money the British taxpayer had to pay?
There are other choices available.
Do you know how much money the British taxpayers had to pay for universal credit payments alone for foreign nationals last year? That was £10 billion.
Do you know how much an asylum seeker gets a week?
Hang on, if you're talking no one can hear.
£49 a week. £49 a week. This is what this man wants to take off you.
29. British taxpayers will be spending half the forecast defence budget on universal credit alone for foreign nationals. There's nothing about that that's remotely acceptable, and I'm sorry, we will stick up for British citizens who paid their taxes.
Lots of people getting in touch on this, including Angela, who says, I'm very concerned regarding BBC Question Time and BBC politics biased towards the left on most subjects, in Angela's opinion. Their persecution of Reform UK and its leader needs to stop. It's dangerous and has led to people saying Nigel's anti-Semitic. The Talk News confirming this opinion. Well, Angela's referring to the fact that Holocaust survivors have called on Nigel Farage to apologise over his alleged anti-Semitic comments. We're going to talk about that with the representative of Reform UK a little bit later on. But just on the migration controversy and the fact that the number of illegal migrants in Britain is still unknown, and the news in an interview with The Telegraph that the Border Security and Asylum Minister has said that children of failed asylum seekers will be deported even if they're born in the UK. Let's talk to Tony Smith, the former head of the UK Border Force. Tony, good morning.
Morning, Peter.
What do you make of the Question Time row, first of all?
Well, I do wonder, one of your callers said how they select their audience, Peter, and I expect you're wondering that too, because I don't tend to watch it so much now. I used to watch it religiously, but I don't know how they say they get a cross section from all the political parties, right?
I was saying this earlier, Tony. I used to work on Question Time. Actually, I was senior producer on Question Time about 15 years ago. I was 27 at the time, and what happened was that literally people ring in, fill out a form, and say there's certain things. You kind of got to believe them. But what was absolutely clear is that the left were always much more vocal, and there appeared to be more of them, despite the efforts of a very good team behind the scenes.
Well, I find it hard to believe that a couple of, illegal entrants, like they may have status now, somehow, magically appeared.
Well, they didn't magically appear. It was deliberate that they were on, and the BBC have given us a statement saying, as immigration continues to be a primary concern for people in the UK, Question Time held a special episode in Dover with panellists from across the political spectrum and a local audience with a range of views and experience. Over 20 audience members asked questions and contributed to the debate, including 2 people with direct experience of the asylum system in the UK who have been granted refugee status. So it was deliberate to put them in the audience. There's no kind of sort of magic formula that put them in there.
Okay, well, I mean, fair enough. Then
is that the right decision? Do you think?
Well, I mean, everyone's entitled to free speech, aren't they? Including people that have got, that come on a small boat and if they've got status here. I mean, I'm assuming they have got some sort of status.
They've got refugee status. Yeah. But they arrived illegally.
Yeah, they did, and this is where the divisions come through politically, don't they, Peter? In terms of what the Reform representative was saying. Well, look, we're not interested in illegal entry. Actually, we don't think you should come to this country illegally at all. And if you do come to this country illegally, we are going to deport you. That is not the same position as the current government are taking, that you can come to this country illegally by a small boat and enter our asylum system and claim human rights. I think that is a very stark difference in political approach between what Reform are saying and what the current government are saying. But that does mean that Reform, if they are elected, will have to go through some very, very significant changes in the way we run our borders and our immigration systems.
And they've said that. They've laid that out, and they've been very clear, and Zia Youssef did so last night, about fundamental reform, including withdrawing from the European Convention on Human Rights.
Yeah, and that is the stark choice. I think we do need to get this over, Peter, if we can, to people about what that means, and then they can make their own mind up about. But that does mean, I think, anyway, for what it's worth, and I've been in this business an awful long time, we do have to demur from the ECHR, because anybody who makes it here will be able to make a claim to stay if they come on a small boat. We do need to look at the Refugee Convention and invoke the Article 31 powers that you must make a claim immediately, not halfway down the road when you're here, and you can't make a claim if you've come from a third country because you're not in immediate fear. So those are the sorts of things that that we have to buy into to back Reform's plan, and that will also involve some changes, basic changes to the Constitution in terms of the House of Lords, the Supreme Court, the powers of the judiciary, which mainly are the main reasons we don't remove more people, are because they are allowed to stay by the courts and not by the Home Office.
And it's interesting you say that. It's interesting you say that about the courts as well, because I wonder if the European Convention on Human Rights, if withdrawal from that, which I support by the way, would be the magic bullet, because is there not going to be a load of case law, or there not going to be a load of courts in this country anyway who will look at British law? Yes, of course, incorporating European law, but there'll be a lot of British law that would have to be re-legislated, and maybe Reform UK government would do this to change all the British law, never mind the European law, that allows all this to happen.
Yeah, you're right. So, I mean, these conventions, the 51 Convention on Refugees and the ECHR have now been incorporated into UK statute. And so we would have to look at our own laws, and they would have to be repealed, in addition to taking a different approach to the European and international convention. So it is a pretty big, it's a big task. But I mean, what I said to you before, Peter, what's happened over the years is that there's been this sort of Gordian knot tied around our border by human rights lawyers and judicial overreach, which basically disempowers a lot of our enforcement activity, both at the border and inland in terms of removals. And that was not the case back in the 70s and the 80s. As I said to you before, when I was an immigration officer, which I was, I had a badge and I was empowered to arrest people and remove them instantly from the country and detain them. And nobody claimed asylum or human rights back then. And that was 20 years after these 51 conventions were signed. So over a very long period of time, over decades really, successive governments have allowed these conventions to be incorporated, and it will take a really, really big reform, that's what they call themselves, to do it. It's not impossible, but it is a big ask, Peter.
I wonder what you make about what the immigration minister, one of the immigration ministers, has said. The Border Security and Asylum Minister, Alex Norris, has said that anyone who did not have the right to be in the UK would be removed. He pledged the Home Office would ramp up the removal of families whose refugee claims have been rejected. He says children of failed asylum seekers will be deported even if they were born in the UK. I mean, is that actually possible under the current legislation? Because I'm not sure it is.
It's really difficult to do that, Peter. It is possible because you don't get British citizenship if you weren't born here and a parent and your parent was lawfully stated. You don't get British citizenship. We changed that back in the 80s because we had a lot of people pregnant women coming over here and giving birth.
Yeah.
And then saying, well, you've got to let me and the baby stay now because he's British and I'm so legally it is possible. Practically, it's almost impossible to remove a family from this country. Mm-hmm. And that's been the case for some time now because of the policies. We're not allowed to detain families.
And I do wonder how that could actually be turned around, especially as the number of illegal migrants in Britain is still unknown because ministers don't have basic data to track who is here. That's a warning from the Migration Observatory at the University of Oxford.
Yeah, so we don't know. The reason we don't know that, I mean, and I do a bit of work in different countries chairing conferences, is because we don't have a biometric entry-exit system in this country. So we don't match our inbound to our outbound records. It's all possible now with technology. Simply take a photograph on your way in, take a photograph on your way out, and we will know exactly how many people are entering and leaving this country, so rather than this ONS guesswork that we have. So that's why, like overstayers, you can come through an e-gate now. Most countries can come through an e-gate, non-visa countries. You won't see an officer. And you will be deemed to have been given entry for 6 months. Whether you've left or not, you won't know unless you have a biometric entry-exit system. So we could do that. It wouldn't cost the earth, and we'd have a much better idea about how many overstayers are here. But I think you'll find the overstayers in this country far, far outweigh, Peter, the numbers that are coming on small boat or illegal entry. But we just simply don't know that because we haven't invested in that sort of technology.
Tony, thank you. That's Tony Smith, former head of the UK Border Force. Let's hear a voice note on Liz Truss, who is, of course, the former Prime Minister. She's got a new show out. She has been promoting that, and Stuart has sent a message on Liz Truss.
I do disagree with you about Liz Truss, massively. I mean, at the end of the day, she's only in a couple of weeks. Whatever happened, as far as I'm concerned anyway, she was never supposed to win that leadership contest. That was supposed to be Sunak every day of the week. She had the right ideas, low tax, high growth, the right ideas and the conservative idea. The problem was that she was never the person that was supposed to win that leadership battle.
Stuart, I think we should probably meet somewhere in the middle on all of this, because I think that she might have had, not a bad idea. I want to reduce taxes. I think taxes are far too high. Growth is far too low, as we know, and nothing that Rachel Reeves stated last week will make growth better in this country. But you can do an awful lot of damage in a very short period of time when you're the most powerful person in the country. So I think we're perhaps somewhere in the middle in this. Dallas has been in touch and says, Liz Truss was a drip of the first order, says Dallas, not even the best of a bad bunch. But I am sure as eggs that Sunak brought about her early demise, calling in favours from former colleagues and working behind the scenes. So determined was he to become Prime Minister. Tracy says, great to have you back, Peter. However, you think that Rachel Reeves is a better Chancellor than Kwasi Kwarteng? Really, you've lost a bit of my respect for that. Tracy, thank you for welcoming me back. I really appreciate that. Lots of messages coming in on that as well. I don't think Rachel Reeves is a good Chancellor. I think she's a terrible Chancellor. I'd give her probably 0.0002 out of 10. Kwasi Kwarteng I'd give 0.00001 out of 10. So it's not as if I think that she's brilliant in any way. She's marginally better than Kwasi Kwarteng, but by a tiny, tiny amount. Neither of them even gets 1 out of 10 or even half a mark out of 10. So fear not, Tracy. I think we're not too far away. I want to speak to Carl in Liverpool, who has a point on question time. This is the big controversy about the fact that those who arrived in our country, at least 2 people who arrived in our country illegally, were in the audience. Carl, what did you make of the programme?
Well, I didn't. Good morning, by the way.
Hi there.
I didn't watch it, but obviously I've caught up this morning via the show. I have no understanding why the BBC would do that. Obviously, it was a plant, but why aren't we asking this man? Well, obviously you came here legally. Do you work? What is your situation? He's
been granted refugee status, as we know. But are you happy to hear from him on Question Time? I mean, we're the home of free speech here, and I'm happy to interview basically anybody. The point, I suppose, is that was he challenged enough? Was there a balanced programme?
Yeah, as I say, I didn't watch it, but I don't want to hear from illegal people coming here, Peter. I want to hear from legal people coming here. Why are we giving this gentleman a platform to
I mean, it's a big debate, Carl. It's a big debate. It's a big issue in our country. Shouldn't we hear from the people at the centre of it?
Yeah, in a way, but our country's falling apart, and we should be hearing from the British people who are struggling. They're the people that matter right now. Yep. Illegal immigrants coming over, Peter, we don't want them, we don't need them. We are flooded. It is an invasion, to put it mildly. We are sinking in debt. People are struggling financially. There's no help for us, yet BBC can put an illegal immigrant on television to tell us a story. Well, how about the people that are sleeping homeless?
Well, you're right, Carl. You're right in that, and those homelessness numbers and rough sleeping numbers have gone up hugely in the last 4 years, and we've got a story today as well about people in temporary accommodation, which is something I feel really, really strongly about. There are babies in bed and breakfast accommodation who do not learn to crawl because there is not enough room for them to learn to crawl in bed and breakfast. Those are the people we should be focusing on.
Of course, Peter, and that is absolutely true. Yeah, those are the people that we should be. People that are struggling on a daily basis. The BBC, we all know it's massively biased. You know, it's ridiculous that you had Nigel Farage yesterday talking about how angry he was at their coverage of him being called a racist, etc. I mean, why we're delving into someone's past as a teenager is beyond me.
I mean, it's interesting you mentioned that one, Carl. We're going to talk about that later with a representative from Reform UK. We now have an open letter from a group of Holocaust survivors demanding Nigel Farage tell the truth and apologise for the anti-Semitic comments that fellow pupils of Dulwich College allege he made towards Jewish peoples. I mean, he has made the point. I don't know what he said or didn't say as a 13-year-old, and I think, you know...
No one does, Peter. That's the thing. No one does. No, we don't know. So why are we judging this man? Why is this man being in the media?
Well, in fairness, I'm basically on your side, Carl. I am obviously totally against any form of racism, including anti-Semitism, as I know you are, Carl, as well. But we don't know what he said. There are all these allegations. He had a press conference yesterday, and he said, look, the BBC, if you go back however many years it is, 49 years to the time when he was 13, I think it's 49 years, the BBC was broadcasting all sorts of stuff that had all sorts of racism within it. Are they holding themselves accountable for that? You know, sitcoms and things that were of the era and of the time that we look back now in absolute, horror and revulsion at in some cases, and other times we say, well, actually, you cannot judge what was broadcast in the 70s on 2025 standards.
Of course not, but do we get an apology from the Labour PM to Rachel Reeves, Angela Rayner? Do we get, they are labelled as right-wing, Nazi racists. Where's our apology as British people? Why is Nigel Farage being pointed out as a racist when he's not? We are trying to get by in life, everyone now. We are struggling on a daily basis, yet everyone, they want to pull pieces off people who are trying. They're so scared, Peter. They are so scared.
And do you know what, Carl? I think you're right, and I think it's just beginning. The Anyone But Nigel campaign is just beginning, because they do talk about Liz Truss. They will do anything to stop Nigel Farage being Prime Minister. Carl, great call. Loads to talk about there. Another texter says the BBC are not a channel for the people. Putting illegal immigrants in the audience to read off a script that was obviously written for him is a joke. Well, we don't know if that script was written for him or not. I don't want to impugn the reputation of Question Time producers, but there are quite a lot of questions being asked today. Looks like he had a day of getting dressed up for his TV debut as well, probably from the public purse. Well, we don't know that, and certainly they made the points. Let me know your points. We are the home of free speech, and if you've some points on Question Time or Nigel Farage or anything else you want to talk about, we have this development today that a group of Holocaust survivors have demanded that Nigel Farage tell the truth and apologise for anti-Semitic comments fellow pupils of his private school Dulwich College allege he made towards Jewish pupils. We'll talk about that with the Reform UK representative later. We'll talk about all sorts of aspects that you want to talk about. Give me a call, 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
The Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense, so head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thanks to everybody who's been in touch. Just during the break there, I had a look at some of the tweets that have been sent. Nickly Pickley says, the first thing Reform will have to do is reform judicial review, or they won't be able to get anything else through, as everything will be challenged in the courts by the lefties and the blob. Thanks also to Ms. Magoo, who says the Eurovision so-called song contest should be consigned to history on the grounds it is now predominantly a platform for politically motivated extremists. It ceased to be a music competition to unite European countries long ago. It's now a farce. Just me, says Peter, would the BBC in 1939 have invited a Nazi into their studio to explain why Hitler is about to invade Poland? I doubt it. So why are they now allowing illegals from terrorist countries to speak on publicly sponsored platforms? They turn my stomach. And another person says, Peter, stop tiptoeing around Ireland, mentioning the links between the IRA being comrades and business partners of Hamas, Hezbollah and Iran. Well, listen, you've come to the right place, because if you want someone to go on a long rant about the IRA, its links to the Palestine Liberation Organisation, Hamas, Hezbollah, whatever, I'm your man. I will condemn completely to my dying day the horrendous terrorism of the IRA and its links to similarly horrendous terrorist organisations like Hamas terrorists and Hezbollah terrorists as well. I'm not tiptoeing around that whatsoever. There's a lot of support for the Palestinian cause for that reason. But there's more than that. There's societal support from many people in Ireland who are not linked to Sinn Féin, not linked to the IRA, but actually, or even would even vote for them, but on the left, and others as well, who are very, very anti-Israel. And I think that's worth talking about, and I'm happy to talk about it with you, person on Twitter, if you want to give me a ring, 0344 499 1000. I want to talk to Miranda in Cumbria now. He's given me a ring on that number. Miranda, thanks for your patience. We've had a busy show this morning. What would you like to say?
Well, it was basically about Brexit and Mr. Lammy and this government and Starmer. I think it was a democratic vote, and essentially they're trying to, I would say they're trying to subvert democracy. And if that was the case, then can't we just dissolve this government? Because that was a democratic vote for whichever party wanted to govern this country. So are they saying that these votes or these elections aren't relevant? That's all I wanted to say, really. I think
it's a very fair point, Miranda, and I do think that you either believe in democracy or you don't. As many viewers and listeners will know, I voted Remain and was trying to encourage other people to vote Remain. But when it came, I didn't campaign or anything, but I talked to friends and family. The point was, Britain voted to leave. That is a democratic vote. And about an hour after it, I got over it, got on with my life and said, right, we now need to implement this because that is the will of the people. And the point of democracies is that things happen that you disagree with, then they get implemented and we all move on.
Absolutely. And it's just, they just seem to be obsessed with this. And you get Emily Maitlis, who is just completely leftist in her views, and the BBC... And I'm sorry, I can't find the words this
That's
morning.
okay. Well, Emily Maitlis isn't on the BBC anymore, but certainly she was called out for her alleged bias at least one point when she was presenter of Newsnight. She now, of course, presents a podcast. Miranda, listen, thanks for your thoughts. Appreciate that. Adrian is in southwest France, and I think it's this Farage controversy you want to talk about, Adrian.
Well, I could talk about a lot of things, but first of all, good morning.
Hello.
I must thank you for you and the whole of your team for supporting the Jewish community and defending Israel.
Well, thank you. We have to, because there's so much anti-Semitism. It's horrendous.
But you do it in a very balanced way.
Thank you.
Which is what not a lot of media, including Sky, do. Coming to Nigel Farage, I'm not bothered about Nigel Farage one way or the other. It's virtually impossible to me to vote from France because I never get the ballot in time. But what he said 50 years ago, I can't remember what I said 50 years ago. That's nonsense.
It's also, we're holding him responsible for what he said as a child.
Well, yeah, exactly. And as you say, it's not proven. He said that, they said that. But more importantly, nobody seems to worry about a previous leader of the Labour Party who spent his life in Parliament and outside attending anti-Semitic rallies against Israel under the cover of Zionism, which probably applies to 90-odd% of Jews. And now he's teamed up with another independent MP who's actually vocally said she wants to see Israel destroyed. good way of getting votes, but you know, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, you're right. I mean, I do think we do have. I sincerely believe, my strongly held personal belief is that Jeremy Corbyn is not anti-Semite. I do believe that is the case. He may defend himself. He would deny that very, very strongly. But I do think, you know, we can judge people by what they say and do as adults, as politicians. I'm not sure. First of all, I don't know what Nigel Farage said when he was 13. He denies it.
No.
But also, lots of people say lots of stupid things when they're children. And I'm not sure 50 years on we need to hold them responsible for what they said as children. If they did something, if they did, you know, we can absolutely hold people responsible for, you know, people who were criminals as children. Yes, they're not good people, but I'm not saying Nigel Farage is like that at all. But actually, well, he might have said some horrible, disgraceful things. And, you know, you're Jewish, Adrian, I think. You told our producers that. I just wonder what you make of the fact that Holocaust survivors today have written an open letter saying that Nigel Farage must take responsibility for his behaviour as a schoolboy.
Not a problem. I can understand where they're coming from because I have met Holocaust survivors. My family don't come from that period. They came to England many, many years ago, beginning of the 20th century. But I can understand, but really they should be writing to people like Jeremy Corbyn, Zara Sultana, and the latest villain, Mr. what's his name, Ayub Khan, rather than criticise somebody who made a mistake 50 years ago.
Okay. Listen, really interesting to talk to you, Adrian. Sorry, final point. Go ahead, Adrian.
They've got the wrong target.
Okay. Adrian, listen, thanks for your call. It's Adrian who's giving us a ring from France there. We're going to talk about this Israel Eurovision controversy in just a minute, about these 4 nations pulling out of Eurovision after Israel has been allowed to compete. Chris Williamson, former Labour MP, who's suspended from the party over anti-Semitism claims, and the Israeli Foreign Ministry Special Envoy, Fleur Hassan Nahum, are going to speak to us after the break. Stay with us. Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk. Let's talk now about Spain, Ireland, Slovenia and the Netherlands. They're going to boycott next year's Eurovision Song Contest after public broadcasters decided to let Israel compete. There was a behind-the-scenes discussion. The BBC will abide by the decision of the European Broadcasting Union. Chris Williamson is with me now, former Labour MP. Chris, what do you think of this?
Well, I think it's absolutely the right decision to pull out of the Eurovision Song Contest if Israel are participating. I mean, why are Israel even in the Eurovision Song Contest? They're not even in Europe, so it seems rather
Well,
curious.
Australia aren't part of Europe either. I don't recall you saying they shouldn't take part.
No, exactly, because it's the Eurovision Song Contest.
That's not the main reason you don't want Israel to take part, though, is it, Chris?
No, but I mean, the reason, I mean, obviously there's that specific geographic point, but I mean, the truth is that Israel's been indicted in the International Court of Justice. Its leaders are wanted. There's arrest warrants out for them by the International Criminal Court.
What's that got to do with music?
They're in, well, hold on a minute. They're in breach of the Geneva Convention and the UN Charter.
Well, that's your interpretation of that. What's it got to do with music?
Well, because if you remember South Africa, the apartheid state of South Africa was in its pomp. I mean, the reason, or one of the reasons that it was able to be overcome and to create a more democratic system in that country was as a result of the pressure from outside.
Israel is a democracy.
That is in breach of the Geneva Convention, UN Charter. That is.
Well, that's your interpretation. Israel is a democracy.
Hold on a minute, let me just have a minute.
Well, Israel is a democracy.
Just a minute. It routinely tortures prisoners. It has thousands of Palestinian hostages. And, you know, it's an offence against international humanity, really, that a country like that is able to participate in sort of cultural events like the Eurovision Song Contest. They should be completely isolated, as South Africa was. They should not be allowed to participate in cultural events like the Eurovision Song Contest, or indeed in any sporting events either. That, I think, would bring significant pressure on the state. I mean, and overcome this dreadful.
You haven't answered my question, Chris. I mean, you're clearly very anti-Israel, and I know that's been your stance for a very long time. But I don't understand why the sequins glitter camp sort of convention of Eurovision has anything to do with the crimes you accuse Israel of.
Well, because it's about putting pressure on Israel, isn't it?
How is that going to put pressure on Israel? Is Benjamin Netanyahu... hold on a second. Is Benjamin Netanyahu honestly going to say, I'm going to change what I'm doing in Gaza because Spain, the Netherlands and Ireland have pulled out of Eurovision? I mean, that's a nonsense, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I doubt very much he would do that. But it's about bringing pressure to bear and not giving them the credit, as it were, to be treated as a normal state. It's not a normal state. It's an illegitimate state. In fact,
it's an illegitimate state. Does Israel not have the right to exist?
I don't believe it does. No,
okay.
I think Israel.
You don't believe Israel has the right to exist. That is an anti-Semitic position, Chris.
No state has a right to exist. Israel's forfeited its right, if it ever even had a right, because let's remember it was actually created on stolen land.
Chris, so this is just nonsense. This is you're saying that Israel doesn't have a right to exist. That is an anti-Semitic position.
Well, that's nonsense. Of course, it's nothing to do with anti-Semitism whatsoever.
It's nothing to do with anti-Semitism. Okay.
Many Jewish people take the same view. But what is wrong with saying that we want a unitary state that has equal rights for all its citizens, a de-Zionized unitary state?
A de-Zionized, so you're against Zionism in general?
Well, Zionism absolutely is a racist, genocidal, settler colonial.
That's absolute nonsense, Chris. Sorry, that's absolute nonsense. I'm not letting you get away with that. No, that's nonsense. It is not nonsense to be a Zionist, to say that Israel has a right to exist.
Peter, we're talking over each other, and nobody can hear if we keep.
Well, that's because you're talking nonsense, and you need to be talked over.
Well, so you're going to talk over me because you disagree with my point of view.
Well, because you're factually wrong.
The truth is, billions of people, not just millions, billions of people agree with me, Peter, around the world, and not you. People are absolutely
doesn't mean they're right.
By the look, people are sickened by what they've seen Israel doing over the last years.
Well, I mean,
and of course, they've been guilty of massacres and discrimination. And
would you then argue that? Okay, Chris, would you then argue that Hamas are a terrorist organisation guilty of massacres?
Well, they're designated as
Do you believe they're terrorists?
Politicians.
Do you believe they're terrorists?
Well, international law is very clear.
Do you believe they're terrorists?
People
Do you believe Hamas are terrorists? I don't care about international law. I care about what you think.
Peter, please calm down. International law stipulates that occupied peoples have an absolute right to armed resistance, to resist their occupiers. And that's what the resistance...
Chris, are Hamas terrorists, yes or no?
but the entirety of the
Right,
resistance...
goodbye, Chris. Goodbye. Thank you very much. That's Chris Williamson there, who has failed to condemn Hamas and failed to say that they're terrorists. They're absolutely terrorists. They are 100% a terrorist organisation, and I've had enough of Chris Williamson, former Labour MP, who was suspended from the party over anti-Semitism claims as well. He says that Israel doesn't have a right to exist. I have no interest in any further discussion with him. I am interested in speaking to Fleur Hassan Nahum, who is the Israeli Foreign Ministry Special Envoy. Fleur, thank you for joining me today. What do you make? I'll ask you the same question that I asked Chris Williamson. What do you make of the fact that Israel have been included in Eurovision and that Spain, Ireland, Slovenia and the Netherlands are going to boycott the contest?
Well, first of all, they made the right decision. I think if the world now decided to boycott the only Jewish country in the world from a song festival, I think that we would have no doubt that we're back in the 1930s Germany, and we all know what happened with that. But what's really interesting in your interview just now with Chris Williamson, and this is kind of taking the hood off the actual problem, is it's not about Israel and Gaza, because when you kept questioning him, he actually said, no, Israel doesn't have the right to exist. So here we go back to it. Nothing to do with the war in Gaza. He just doesn't believe in Israel's right to exist. So first of all, which country around the world, which was created in 48, like India, Pakistan, is anybody saying, oh, do they have the right of exist? Do they have the right to exist? So the fact that the only Jewish country in the world is still being spoken about whether we deserve to exist after 78 years, that in itself is the anti-Semitism that you quite rightly accused him of.
Well, I also don't know what... Well, first of all, thank you. And secondly, I do not know what a song contest, which is, you know, as crazy and fun and ridiculous as the Eurovision Song Contest, which is, you know, it's a bizarre spectacle every year. It was won, of course, by Dana International for Israel some years ago with Viva la Diva. I don't know what that's got to do with Israel's policy in Gaza. I just have no idea.
Well, absolutely nothing. But what he's trying to, I mean, what he argues for is basically the isolation of Israel in the world. That's what he's arguing for. He's saying, let's just boycott and isolate the only Jewish country on earth. And he feels that's justified because of a war we didn't start, that everybody seems to forget. And he talks about an occupation that didn't exist. From 2005, Israel left Gaza. And he talks about the fact there's no equal rights for citizens, even though Israel has 20% of citizens that are Arabs who live in Israel in full equal rights. He now wants to bring in all sorts of other territories around Israel that are run by the Palestinian Authority. So the whole thing is nonsensical. And at the end of the day, as you quite rightly pointed out, it points to a deep-seated anti-Semitism in people like Chris Williamson, who have basically bought lock, stock and barrel the narrative of the Islamists, the same Islamists that talk openly about taking over Europe and taking over the rest of the world. So this is who these people are aligning themselves with. And I want to just add one more thing. Not only does a music festival have nothing to do with anything, the irony and the sad tragedy is that on October 7th, a music festival, a peaceful music festival, was stormed and massacred by Hamas and killed hundreds of young people who went to dance. And so it's putting really, it's adding to us insult to injury. That's
and I actually went to the site of the Nova Music Festival in a few months ago. It was an extremely moving experience, and I do wonder, and I would question Avon and Somerset Police again as to why they have not, it would appear, so far arrested Bob Villan for, at our own music festival, biggest music festival here in the UK, Glastonbury, when he shouted death, death to the IDF. We know he's been interviewed, but there do not appear to have been any arrests. We certainly haven't heard of them yet anyway. Fleur, thank you. Fleur Hassan Nahum, Israeli Foreign Ministry Special Envoy and former Deputy Mayor of Jerusalem. Appreciate your comments today. Lots of other comments coming in, including Stephen in London, who says, with those like Chris Williamson, people have the bloody nerve to look back into Nigel Farage's school days from 50 years ago. What a nasty piece of work this ex-Labour MP is. Well, I think Mary in County Down might disagree with you. He says Farage was not a child when he made these disgusting anti-Semitic comments and mocked Jewish pupils. He denies that, of course. He was a young man, and it shouldn't take a group of Holocaust survivor families to call him out and demand that he apologises. He has flip-flopped and prevaricated on the shameful episode and needs to address it properly. I agree certainly with Mary in County Down that Farage needs to address it properly. I don't think the press conference yesterday really gave us much more clarity on that. There does seem to be some disagreement but in Reform UK. Richard Tice said the claims were nonsense. Farage says he never directly mocked someone. I do think he needs a bit of clarity on this, and we haven't got that. Is he going to apologise? It'll be very interesting to see. Certainly we have these Holocaust survivors now calling on Nigel Farage to apologise over his alleged comments. Interestingly, Ben in Belfast says Russia should be included in Eurovision if it's all about fun, friendship, glitter and singing between nations. Yvonne in Solihull says, well done to get rid of him. We do not think we should listen to this man. Williamson thinks if he stays polite and erudite that his view is valid. He's a disgrace to his fellow man, says Yvonne in Solihull. He did annoy me. He did get under my skin because I probably should have been calmer with Chris Williamson, but listen, I just find that kind of rhetoric and that kind of, even people who say that Israel doesn't have a right to exist and people who will not condemn Hamas, it just annoys me to such a huge degree, because I know to a small degree I have some sense of what my Jewish friends and relatives, not relatives, but friends and neighbours and viewers and listeners have been through. I've been to Israel in the last few months, as I've mentioned a couple of times this morning on the programme, and it just drives me mad. I'm sorry if I slightly lost control there actually with Chris Williamson, because I just think his rhetoric, what he was saying, it was so deeply offensive, and actually I think it was the right decision to cut him off, because I didn't want to hear any more of it. Maybe you disagree with me, and that's fine. 0344 499 1000. We're going to talk about Liz Truss next. Stay with us.
The Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Carol is in Clacton and says, my goodness, Peter, just listening to that awful person, Chris Williamson, saying that Israel shouldn't exist. How disgusting. I'm glad you tried to shut him up. Dave in Hull says, morning, Peter. Regarding Eurovision, even if everyone pulled out except the UK and Israel, the UK would still come last, says Dave in Hull. And Dee says, Chris Williamson is a classic example of the morons we have in the past and continue to elect to run our country. A despicable individual who should crawl back under the stone he came from, says Dee. Let's talk about another former politician, Liz Truss. She has got a new show. She's going to have a show on YouTube. Let's see how she launched this yesterday.
In 2022, I was deposed from the office of Prime Minister of Great Britain.
People had decided her time was up.
I tried to save our country from the doom loop it is now in.
We set out a vision for a low-tax, high-growth economy that would take advantage of the freedoms of Brexit.
I was blamed for a market crisis that was not my fault. The deep state and their allies in the media and politics tried to destroy me because I challenged their decades-long failure. Now I'm back. I will expose the people who brought me down. I will take on the deep state. I will tell the truth about what is happening in our country and across the West. Tune in to the Liz Truss Show every Friday. Tune in to the counter-revolution.
Well, Conor Tomlinson is a writer for Courage Media. Will you be tuning in to the counter-revolution, Conor?
Yeah, I will, considering Liz has become an unexpected friend. Peter, after I interviewed her last year about her book, and then Hope Not Hate decided to accuse me of all things of anti-Semitism, and so Liz saw that it was objectionable, and so we've become quite friendly. And she's seen the fact that, well, Ofcom-regulated media have absolutely repudiated their reputation, especially the BBC and the stunt that they tried to pull last night at its non-representative question time panel with illegal immigrants and scripted questions in the audience. So if instead people are axing the TV licence, they're tuning out of ITV, Sky News, the BBC, etc., and they're listening either to dissident outlets like Talk or, increasingly, podcasts and independent media shows like my own or possibly Liz's. Why would you not circumvent the gatekeepers and censors and try and get your own message out there and allow the audience to decide whether or not your narrative?
I think that's all fine, and I'm all for media plurality and free speech, and anybody can do whatever they want within the law, certainly on YouTube and other outlets. Do we really not know what Liz Truss thinks? I mean, there was nothing she said in that little promo there that I don't think, you know, most people who would have followed Liz Truss and had any sense of her career and how she was removed as leader of the country would have any doubt as to what she has to say and what she feels and how she thinks.
Well, I think it's useful. One, repetition sort of drills it into people's heads, and Keir Starmer understands this because he performs acts of political necromancy anytime he's at the dispatch box and keeps mentioning Liz's name to blame her for the mini-budget and the fiscal crisis that Rachel Reeves is only making worse. Also, a lot of the admissions that a lot of the fiscal crisis wasn't Liz's fault were quietly eked out by the likes of the Bank of England, who took credit for about 2/3 of the run on the bonds earlier this year. You know, it's the old phrase of a lie gets halfway around the world before the truth.
It's not a lie to say that Liz Truss wasn't responsible for at least some of the market turmoil.
I think that she reacted poorly to the fact that interest rates were raised independently of the mini-budget, that the OBR leaked it ahead of time, and that the Bank of England sold a lot of guilt without her ability to do so. I don't think she should have resigned, but hey, I've litigated that with her privately. I think a lot of this now is about doing what the likes of JD Vance said in a pre-election interview with Tucker Carlson, which is understanding what went wrong. Because Vance actually pointed to Liz Truss's...
Does Liz Truss understand what went wrong? Does she understand her role in that?
I think she does, yeah.
Because she's being pretty bullish about it. I mean, she said there was market turmoil which was not her fault. At least some of the blame was her fault and was Kwasi Kwarteng's.
I think the majority wasn't.
Doesn't matter if it's the majority. Some of it was, and some of what she said, and you know, when Kwasi Kwarteng said in that interview, "There's more to come," that caused market turmoil, and she doesn't seem to have any apology for any of that.
Oh, I think she's said that she's mishandled the sort of media circus at the time, but she also didn't really realise what was going on. Again, if you've listened to her...
She's the Prime Minister, you know, it's not much of an excuse to say I didn't really realise what was going on.
Yeah, I agree. She should have had a bit more attention to detail. Again, I've talked about her with this privately. Just referring back to the utility of it, Peter, bear in mind J.D. Vance before the election said that he was looking at Liz Truss's fall, whether or not she is partly wholly to blame for that, as a way of preventing the Trump administration from making the same mistakes. And so what I think the use of Liz Truss's tenure in Downing Street, or even just her doing interviews of her own show is to point out what went wrong to prevent the likes of Reform making the same mistakes that she did, just as the Trump administration didn't want to make the same mistakes that she did, or in their first term, and make it so that Trump has a more successful second term. So it might be useful to learn a few lessons here, again, whether or not you think she was wholly or partly responsible, to stop another government from making the same mistakes.
Okay. Connor, thank you. Connor Tomlinson there, writer for Courage Media. Let's speak to Mary in Hemel Hempstead about the EU, I think is what you've given us a ring about, Mary. You're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Well, it's just, I wonder if it's because they want to go back to the EU because they don't know how to govern. They need like outsourcing or creating a quango. Join it, and then they can be, if anything goes wrong, they can be the ones that can be blamed. It's not our fault, God, so to speak.
Do you think that's the reason that David Lammy failed to say 7 times that he didn't think Brexit should be reversed, that we wouldn't perhaps join the customs union?
Well, I just don't know. I don't think they've got a brain cell between any of them, really, quite frankly. But I just feel that they just find that they can't handle it, so they're looking for somewhere else that they can literally outsource and govern for them.
Thank you for your thoughts there, Mary. I appreciate that. Thanks also to Suze, who says the trust market turmoil wouldn't have happened if pension funds hadn't been over-leveraged. That caused the spike in bonds and panicked the market. The Financial Conduct Authority knew all about this, and so did the Bank of England. The upside is that, as a result, pensions are not so overexposed. So not all Liz Truss's fault. That's what many economists have stated. I don't think it's all Liz Truss's fault. I do think she's a role in it. I don't think she's fessed up to that to a great degree, and I do think Kwasi Kwarteng is the worst Chancellor this country has ever had. Rachel Reeves not far behind him. Ted says if Israel is banned from Eurovision just because it very nearly won last year against all predictions, and now the pathetic Hamas supporters want to change the rules. If some countries don't like Israel in the competition, don't participate, they won't be missed. Long one from Daisy in Newport. He says, I hope you had a lovely holiday. Thank you, I did. Regarding Brexit, I voted Remain and would support a return to a customs union and the single market because I've seen the damage firsthand that Brexit has done to my partner's business and friends' businesses. Import charges, particularly on small retailers selling to the EU, have made business unviable for people I know. That's not ideology, that's just fact. Trade deals with the rest of the world are fine, but my partner's business involves large-scale machinery that needs transporting and a couple of guys to travel out for a few days to install it. Straightforward when that involves EU countries, not so if it's India or Malaysia. Employees don't want to travel for 8 to 10 hours for a couple of days' work, or even a day's work if the machine breaks down. That said, if we were to rejoin the customs union and single market, that should only be by referendum. I wouldn't want to join the EU political structures. Sorry to be disagreeing voice, but Brexit has a real-world impact on people I know and love, says Daisy in Newport. Daisy, never, ever, ever apologise for disagreeing. We disagree without being disagreeable on this show, and we like all different types of viewpoints unless you're an anti-Semite. Thank you very much to everybody who has contributed. We've got another hour to go. There's lots more to discuss. We're going to talk to a Reform representative next about the controversy in regard to Nigel Farage. 0344 499 1000 to get your point across.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very good afternoon. This is Talk. Thank you so much for your company. Peter Cardwell here through until 1 o'clock today, and in the same time slot, 10 till 1 tomorrow and Sunday. Interesting news that the BBC was one of the organisations that backed the decision to allow Israel to compete at next year's Eurovision Song Contest. Tim Davie, the outgoing Director General, and approximately 50 broadcasters of the European Broadcasting Union voted against holding a separate vote, and instead they backed new rules to stop government meddling. We'll talk about all of that. We will talk as well about the Holocaust survivors calling on Nigel Farage to apologise over alleged anti-Semitic comments. In fact, a representative of Reform UK is standing by to talk to us about that. We'll talk about Labour collapsing in the polls to 14% in one poll. Also, the big migration controversy that was on Question Time last night. And jury trials as well. I'm really interested in this as well because there's so many problems in our courts at the moment. A lot of it is not really down to juries. It's down to access to justice. It's down to people who've had horrendous things happen to them, waiting literally years to get to court, and courts falling apart. Lots of information from various people who have been using courts, barristers, people who've been through them as well, saying, you know, the lighting's falling down, the wires are exposed, the photocopiers don't work. Our jury's really the biggest thing. So we're going to be talking to the former Solicitor General a little bit later on, Sir Michael Ellis, about that. As always, I want you to contribute to the programme as much as possible. Get as many calls on the air as possible. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell. Send me a voice note, send me a WhatsApp text message, or give me a ring, all on the main number 0344 499 1000. Plenty to discuss between now and 1 o'clock here on Talk. Well, there are quite a number of political controversies around today. We'll talk in a minute or two about Zia Youssef, who is the policy chief of Reform UK. He was on Question Time last night and had a bit of a clash with small boat migrants, two people who arrived in this country illegally. They've been given refugee status, but they were on Question Time last night. David Lammy as well on Brexit I want to talk about. There are lots of things I want to talk about, but the big dominant story in so much of the media at the moment, and indeed in the last couple of hours, is that an open letter from Holocaust survivors is saying that the Reform UK leader, Nigel Farage, must take responsibility for his behaviour as a schoolboy. This is allegations that Nigel Farage, as a 13-year-old, made anti-Semitic comments. This is a group of Holocaust survivors demanding Nigel Farage, as they put it, tell the truth and apologise for the anti-Semitic comments that fellow pupils at his school, Dulwich College, allege he made towards Jewish pupils. The letter reads, it's from 11 Holocaust survivors, says, as Holocaust survivors, we understand the danger of hateful words because we have seen where such words lead. Let us be clear, praising Hitler, mocking gas chambers, or hurling racist abuse is not banter, not on the playground, not anywhere. That's what Nigel Farage is accused of and denies. When allegations arise about invoking Nazi attitudes towards Jewish children, the response is honesty, reflection, and commitment to truth. So we ask you, did you say Hitler was right? Did you say gas them, mimicking gas chambers? Did you subject your classmates to anti-Semitic abuse? Now, Nigel Farage, the leader of Reform UK, got very animated at a press conference yesterday about this. He talked about this. He said that the BBC was wrong to accuse him of this. We're not talking about the BBC in this regard. We're talking about a group of Holocaust survivors. Alex Wilson is Reform UK's London Assembly member. Alex, should Nigel Farage apologise to these people? Should he be clear in terms of what he said and didn't say? Are you clear in terms of what he said and didn't say?
Good afternoon, Peter. Good to be with you.
Hi there.
On the show, as always. Look, this has just obviously broken this morning. I haven't seen the letter in full, and I haven't spoken to Nigel about it, but he dealt with this question very, very robustly yesterday. Yes, talking about the allegations from the BBC, and you know, putting that in the context of some of the programming that the BBC themselves were showing at a similar time. Yeah, he's dealt with this. As far as I'm concerned, it's an issue that's been. Sorry, one of my dogs is just trying to.
That's
intervene.
all right, but I mean, it's not an issue that's been dealt with according to 11 Holocaust survivors. I understand you haven't seen the letter, but I'm just reading bits to you now. I mean, they include Hedy Argent. I'm not quite sure how you pronounce Hedy's name. I think it's H-E-D-I. I think it's Hedy, who lost 27 members of her family in the Holocaust. Another member of the group, Simon Winston, was held in a ghetto before escaping in September 1942, spending the rest of the war in hiding. We're not talking about an attack by the liberal left. We're not talking about the BBC. We're not talking about the establishment. We're talking about Holocaust survivors who are saying that he needs to come clean on this. He says when allegations arise about Nazi attitudes towards Jewish children, the responsible response is honesty, reflection and commitment to truth. Do you believe that Nigel Farage has shown honesty, reflection and commitment to truth?
Yeah, I said he dealt with this question yesterday. He's made his position very, very clear. Look, as far as this letter is concerned, and the people that have written it, I have nothing but absolute horror of what happened in the Holocaust. Just a couple of weeks or so ago, I was in Israel as part of a Reform UK delegation, which went with the full support of Nigel Farage and Richard Tice as our leadership team. We visited Yad Vashem. We visited also the scenes of the October the 7th massacres in kibbutzes and at the Nova Music Festival. We are a party that has been absolutely resolute behind supporting Israel, her right to defend itself, and London and Britain's Jewish community. I'm regularly raising these questions in the Assembly, where I'm challenging Sadiq Khan, where I'm challenging the Met Commissioner, Sir Mark Rowley, over their handling of the Palestine protests. They're not protests, they're hate marches. We are absolutely robust on this question of anti-Semitism. It's me and a few others that have been really pushing to make sure these issues are dealt with. So I have huge respect for anybody who's been through that situation, and obviously I will now look in detail at this letter. But it's kind of broken this morning. I haven't seen that full context. But as a party is concerned, we are the most pro-Jewish, pro-Israeli party out there, and recent polling showed that. Recent polling from commissioned, I think it was by the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism, proved that to be the case.
Okay,
so,
let me just go back. I mean, you may not be familiar with the letter, but let me just go back to something you will be familiar with, because Richard Tice, the deputy leader of Reform UK, there was a very controversial interview. We're just going to play a clip in a second about Nigel Farage clashing with a BBC reporter. But just before we do, Richard Tice said the claims were nonsense and that Nigel Farage didn't say the things. Nigel Farage says he never directly discriminated against someone or was racist towards someone. The claims are that he said Hitler was right and gassed them, mimicking gas chambers. Are you sure he didn't say that as a 13-year-old?
Well, I wasn't there, was I? So
yeah, but from what Nigel Farage has said, and I expect you believe your party leader, did he or did he not say those things?
I believe what Nigel Farage has said, and look, people's recollections
can vary over
the course of half a century. But I look, you're asking, you're trying to put words in my mouth.
I'm not putting words in your mouth. I'm asking you whether he said them or not.
Yeah, you have to ask that to Nigel. Nigel has said what Nigel has said.
Okay, well, let's hear from him. He clashed with a BBC reporter yesterday. This was at a press conference. Let's see what Nigel Farage said.
Whilst Nigel stood out, he was neither aggressive nor a racist. If I can help in any way, let me know. And I've had plenty of those messages over the course of the last few days, and I'm sick to death of the double standards and hypocrisy, above all, of your organisation. And what happened on the Today programme this morning was a complete bloody disgrace. Next, Sam Coates from Sky News. No, I'm done with you, thank you.
My question was, he said they were lying. I mean, it sounds like...
Sam Coates from Sky... I'm really, until you apologise for all of your output, your appalling output, at the same time that I'm accused of saying these things which I deny, I'm not speaking to you, all right?
So he was very clear that he denied saying them. Richard Tice says that they're nonsense. So you're clear, Alex, presumably, that these allegations didn't happen in as far as you've been reassured by Nigel Farage?
What Nigel said there reassures me. That gives me all the reassurance I need. And say he's had letters of support from other school friends. People's recollections vary over things over the years. We're talking about something that happened when people were 13 years old. I don't know what you were doing when you were 13 years old. I can't even remember what I was doing when I was 13 years old. But what matters is the here and now.
But Nigel Farage says he can, and he didn't say it.
as a party, we are absolutely resolute in tackling anti-Semitism in every level. We're in the process of setting up a reform Jewish group. My senior researcher in my office is Jewish and is fully 100% behind the party, behind me and behind Nigel and behind Richard, behind all of us.
Okay, thanks for answering those questions. Just some breaking news. I'll come back to you in just a second, Alex, but there's some breaking news that Rachel Reeves is not going to face an official probe into claims she lied about the state of the economy before the budget. This is Farage, again, your party leader, Alex, demanding the Chancellor be investigated for saying there was a black hole in the public finances of more than £20 billion, which it later emerged did not exist. She's also been accused of market abuse and misleading voters by the Tories ahead of the budget. And Mr Farage told the Independent Advisor on Ethical Standards, Ministerial Standards, Sir Laurie Magnus, her actions plainly meet the threshold for an investigation. But Sir Laurie Magnus has written to Nigel Farage yesterday to say he will not open a case into what happened because it falls outside of his remit. So that's Sir Laurie Magnus doing that. Presumably that is a decision you disagree with, Alex. I mean, we've literally just got this into my hand. I don't expect you to know all the detail of this, but your party leader has asked for an official probe. That official probe now isn't happening.
Of course, I disagree with that decision. Not surprised, because it's the establishment protecting itself, as we have learned to expect from governments of both Conservative and Labour. What's more important about Rachel Reeves, though, and she will be judged in the court of public opinion, the polling, the by-election results, people know this government is falling apart at the seams, and she is a very big part of that. Her last budget last year was a catastrophe for small business and hospitality in particular, with the national insurance hike. Her current budget now, with the business rates reforms, that is proving to be a catastrophe for hospitality in particular as well, and pubs and restaurants. And people can see right through it. Unemployment is rising every month on month, since she's been making these decisions. The economy is in terrible state. She clearly misled the country, the markets, Parliament, and it seems her own cabinet as well, when it comes to this question of was there or was there not a black hole that necessitated rising taxes. We know the reason why she wanted to rise taxes. It's because she wanted to fund a welfare binge, and people will see through it, and they're fed up with it. And that's why, when that election comes, this government will be out on its ear.
Let's just take a look at what happened at Question Time last night on the issue of immigration. Your head of policy, Zia Youssef, was on Question Time. You're going to hear a number of different voices. Just saying to our viewers and listeners, you're going to hear a number of different voices. Starts with Fiona Bruce. Then you've got a person who arrived in this country illegally in the audience. He is a refugee. He's been granted refugee status. You'll hear Zia Youssef. You'll hear Daisy Cooper, who is the deputy leader of the Lib Dems, and Zach Polanski, who is the Green Party leader as well. Quite a confused and rambunctious exchange. I'll get Alex's opinion on it in just a second, but let's just remind ourselves what happened on BBC's Question Time last night.
So the man in the white shirt, now I know you came over on a small boat. Am I right about that?
Yeah.
What's your response to what you're hearing? Because obviously everyone is talking about people like you.
Well, let me say something first. I just want to clear that leaving the convention doesn't just affect the migrants. It would give ordinary people one less court, to protect their rights. Even for weekend checks and the government power, risk on peace settlement in Northern Ireland, and damage our security cooperation. Do you think this
I'll
is
happily answer that question. My parents came here legally. They did not come here illegally. And look, there's a clear dividing line in British politics. If you're watching this at home and you want to vote for a party that will prioritise the interests of foreign nationals who came here illegally, or do you want to vote for a party that are going to prioritise British citizens who work hard, set their alarm clocks in the evening before going to bed, and toil to pay tax money?
That is not the dividing line. That is not the dividing line in British politics right now.
Do you know how much money the British taxpayer had to pay?
There are other choices available.
Do you know how much money the British taxpayers had to pay for universal credit payments alone for foreign nationals last year? That was £10 billion.
Do you know how much an asylum seeker gets a week?
Hang on, if you're talking, no one can hear.
£49 a week. £49 a week. This is what this man wants to take off you.
British taxpayers will be spending half the forecast defence budget on universal credit alone for foreign nationals. There's nothing about that that's remotely acceptable, and I'm sorry, we will stick up for British citizens who paid their taxes.
Zia Youssef there, speaking there on Question Time. Alex, presumably you agree with every word that your head of policy has said there, but was the BBC right to allow that question to be asked? I'm all for free speech. I don't think anybody should be denied a voice necessarily if they're saying things within the law. My point, and we are the home of free speech here at Talk, my question, I suppose, is should the BBC have had someone who arrived in this country illegally on the air?
Well, I think that exchange showed why I very rarely watch Question Time, because the standard of or the conduct of debate is usually fairly shambolic, and yeah, they're all talking over each other, and nobody really gets much progress made on the discussion. But look, I completely agree with everything that Zia has said. That he pointed out the cost of illegal migration and cost of those who are now in receipt of universal credit when we're at a state when the public finances are on the floor. But it's a question of fundamental fairness. We have an asylum system, an immigration system that is broken, and we have people taking advantage of it, and people who are coming to this country illegally. The first act they do to get into this country is to break the law. And why should we be putting up with that? We shouldn't. They are not fleeing war and persecution in France. We need to have a better way of removing and returning, and the one in one out deal from the government isn't doing the job. Rwanda didn't do the job under the last government. It never got off the ground because fundamentally none of the other parties are prepared to do what is required, which is leave the ECHR and start that process. And as far as the audience is concerned, look, that programme last night was broadcast in Dover. Now, Dover is an area where in all 7 of the county council divisions for the local elections for Kent County Council this year, all 7 of those were won by Reform. And there's a reason why. It's because Dover's on the front line of this crisis, of this invasion, and it's only Reform that wants to put a stop to it.
OK, Alex, thank you. Let's speak to Laura Jane in Hampshire. She wants to talk about Question Time. You give me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Laura Jane, you heard what Alex Wilson there, the Reform UK London Assembly member, said about Question Time. What do you think?
Well, rather like him, I sadly don't listen to it anymore because it's shambolic. It used to be informative and the arguments were interesting, but no longer. And when I watched that clip, it made me feel, well, actually, I just thought it was funny because it was so obvious those two immigrants had been chosen. They were articulate. They'd obviously been here for some time. They didn't pick somebody who had just arrived. I wonder why not. And of course, especially the Afghani gentleman, he sounded eminently sensible and all the things. So it was a fix. And it's also part of this larger picture, and I have said this over and over again, that the political landscape for Nigel is now going to be a bit like walking through a minefield. There are going to be little bombs going off the whole way because both the Conservatives and the Labour are running scared. And
well, I agree with you, and I think we've seen it in Caerphilly, for example, electorally, when there was that by-election, because there is a definite, and people are entitled to vote however they want, of course they are,
of course
but there's definite tactical voting against reform, there's no doubt about that.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm 65, and I certainly don't remember what I said when I was 13 at my
If he did say these things, if you have a load of people who are saying that you made anti-Semitic comments when you were 13, and there are quite a number of people making these allegations, he denies them. He was straightforward yesterday at that press conference. We saw that clip a little bit earlier on and heard it. He denied it. Do you believe him, or do you believe those many accusers?
I don't think it's a question of that. It's a question of the fact that this is ridiculous. It is part of a besmirch campaign. I can tell you on air, and I don't mind saying it, I was a raving communist when I was 18. My dad was horrified. He'd voted Conservative all his life. I wanted state control. I was a teacher, and I was I've obviously changed. Well,
but you're not. I mean, look, I'm not a communist.
I changed my views.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. But you being a hold on, Laura Jane. You being a communist wasn't discriminatory, wasn't racist, wasn't a horrendous thing. Nigel Farage denies those comments, but if he said them, is that not an issue?
I think it is, because communism is racist at its heart. I mean, look at what happens all over the world.
So things you said and did were racist back in the day, now they're not, and that's irrelevant? Is that what you're saying? I don't want to put words in your mouth, Laura Jane.
I'm saying that as an 18-year-old, I was not an adult in many respects, and I was still learning. And I probably, like a lot of 18-year-olds, I was at university and I did things that I regret. And I'm not making excuses for Nigel. What I'm saying is that this is part of a besmirch campaign. And those Holocaust victims who have signed that letter, and believe you me, I've got Jewish blood on both sides of my family, even though I'm Roman Catholic. It's the fact is that how do we know that they aren't part of a campaign that somebody has managed to persuade them? And I'm not. I genuinely.
I know you're not besmirching them, but they may. I mean, it's perfectly understandable if you've been through the horror of that, or even if you're simply a Jewish person. But let me just ask you one more question before you go, Laura Jane.
Yeah.
Surely what
By the way,
Nigel...
it's nice to have you back. You're very wound up after your holiday.
Okay, thank you. I think Chris Williamson found that. We have a few viewers and listeners who may agree. I wonder if surely Nigel Farage can just say, look, he denies saying these comments. That's fine. We've played that clip. I totally get that. I totally understand that is Nigel Farage's position. But why does he not just say, look, I will have a meeting with these people if they want to have one who have accused me of doing these things. Recollections vary here in the phrase of the late Queen. Recollections may vary, but listen, if I did say something that was horrendous and awful, we all did things as 13-year-olds that were dreadful. I sincerely apologise for that. Surely he should just do that, no?
Well, maybe he will. Maybe he will. Right. We don't know yet. But I'm apologising for being a dreadful 18-year-old on air. I'm apologising for my views at that stage. Maybe he will. But my point is, this is a campaign which is going to get worse in finding anything and everything that will, besmirch his reputation.
Well, I certainly want our politicians to be held to scrutiny, no matter who they are. But I think you're right, Laura Jane, in the wider point you make, which is that the Anyone But Nigel campaign is just starting.
Exactly, and that's the worrying thing.
Okay.
Anyway, nice to have you back.
Thank you very much, Laura Jane. It's lovely to talk to you. We're going to talk to James Mathewson in a second about Labour's ratings, 14%, and David Lammy as well, who failed to rule out rejoining the EU. Honestly, we'll talk about the celebrity mastermind and Deputy Prime Minister in just a second. Stay with us.
The Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Andy in Aberdeen says, Peter, the fact Chris Williamson will go on national radio spouting some incredibly offensive anti-Semitic nonsense proves how terrifying this problem is. He obviously knows the police won't knock on his door for this. It's disgusting. Dale says, the home of free speech, not if you knew what your guest beliefs are. Why get them on, Cardi P? Georgia says, Cardi P, you absolutely did the right thing cutting that vile anti-Semite off. As a half-Jewish woman, I'm immensely grateful to you for the way you speak about this subject and politics generally. It was very kind. Thank you. She also adds a bit at the end, which she's described as schmaltzy. It is schmaltzy, but it's very much appreciated, and I better not read it out, because Ofcom Georgia will have my guts for garters. There's absolutely no way I can mention about my book, Political Animals, being available now on Amazon, all good bookshops, on at petercardwell.com. James says, if Chris Williamson can say he doesn't want Israel to exist, can I say I would like Hamas to no longer exist? James, you can. You're very welcome to say so, and I totally agree with you. Caroline says, so obviously the gutter press have been trying very hard to dig something to bring Nigel Farage down. If that's all they found, if I was Nigel, I would take it. We can continue that debate. But I want to talk about Labour now. They're tanking in the polls, about 14%. But actually some breaking news in the last few minutes about Rachel Reeves. She's escaped a ministerial ethics probe over budget lies, alleged lies, as Standards czar. This is Sir Laurie Magnus, the independent ministerial advisor, rejecting Nigel Farage's demand for the Chancellor to be investigated. She's not going to face an official probe into claims she lied about the state of the economy before the budget. Well, James Mathewson is with me. He is a former Labour Party spokesman. James, do you think Laurie Magnus is right to not do this probe, or should it be the case that the only way is ethics?
It's a difficult one, isn't it? I mean, it's not going to look good for them. Optics-wise, it's not great that there won't be an investigation. But also, I think probably it will be something that they hope people will move on from and not think too much about. I think the whole issue, the whole kind of misleading, the lies, the so-called lies, all of that stuff, was quite a difficult issue to find cut through with the British public, because the second...
Really? Do you think that? I mean, I think a lot of our viewers and listeners who are a section of the British public, they're probably not representative of the whole of the public, but they're very representative. Of course, all the calls, texts and tweets are very representative of all our viewers and listeners. I mean, they're very annoyed with Rachel Reeves and all of this. They really feel betrayal here. 43 tax rises in a country where we're now taxed more than we ever have been as a proportion of what the country makes.
Yeah, I have absolutely no surprise that talkTV viewers don't like her and continue not to like her. That's kind of the point. But I mean, the thing is, Peter, I think with the general public, it's very difficult sometimes for these issues to cut through. They hear, misleading, they hear lying and think, okay, well, what's that about? And then you try and explain the minutiae of the detail of this. And if it takes longer than, 10 seconds to explain, as this does, I think you lose a lot of people. You lose most people. So I think they'll be hoping that in that event, this will just slip by.
We'll see what happens, but as you know and I know, it's an emotional process, and how people, they may not remember all the details, but it's how they feel about a party, and certainly that's been reflected in the polls at the moment. New poll out putting Labour just down at 14% percentage points. Are you surprised by that?
No, not at all. I mean, they're doing so badly right now, and I think it's only going to get worse because there doesn't seem to be any major response to dealing with it. And the budget had kind of glimmers in it, as I would call them, kind of little bits of, kind of something that could be bigger and something that could kind of fix their problems and move in the right direction.
Speaking about moving in the right direction, I wonder if you believe that the Deputy Prime Minister, David Lammy, moved in the right direction in what he said in a podcast hosted by Emily Maitlis and John Sopel. This is what Deputy Prime Minister David Lammy said.
our future is inextricably linked to the European Union, and we
part
should,
of a customs union,
and we should be working deliberately over time to be closer. That's my view.
Would you like to see us in a customs union or a single market?
That journey of travel to me is self-evident.
So the question, customs union?
That is not currently
Would you welcome
our policy. That's not currently where we are.
But should it be?
But you can see countries like Turkey with a customs union seemingly benefiting and seeing growth in their economy.
David Lammy there, the Deputy Prime Minister. Is that helpful? Because if I were Keir Starmer, I'd be despairing that my sort of Deputy Prime Minister was sailing pretty close to the wind there about rejoining the customs union. Maybe that's an unfair interpretation. What do you think, James?
No, I think it's very unhelpful. I mean, obviously, he didn't set the conversation. Mateless knows what she's doing with that one. It's very clever because this is a huge dividing point still in the Labour Party. And you know that the majority of the leadership under Keir Starmer's leadership, the majority of people in cabinet are, pro the EU still, pro joining the EU, pro kind of some kind of customs union in general. And I understand that. And look, I am in theory. The problem is the Brexit wounds haven't healed. Those same divisions are still there.
And also we had a democratic decision to leave the EU.
Listen, Peter, I'm in Scotland, so, democratic decisions and referendums mean nothing because people want them every 5 years, it seems. So, again...
It was once in a generation. I'm sure the SNP would never be asking for another referendum because it was once in a generation, James, and they wouldn't go back on their promises, would they? Yeah.
Yeah, I wish.
Well, indeed. Listen, thank you very much indeed. James, good to see you. James Mathewson, former Labour Party spokesman. We're going to talk in just a second about everything you want to talk about. We'll take a load of calls, texts and tweets, of course, before 1 o'clock when Ian Collins takes over. But we're also going to talk about a big story in the news this week has been the change again by David Lammy, the Justice Secretary and Deputy Prime Minister, about jury trials. But what is the actual state of our courts? Because I've been inundated with people contacting me, telling me about the state of the courts, the fact that it is just such a shambles, and it's not really about jury trials per se, it's about the actual, quite literally, the fabric of different courts. People waiting huge amounts of time for justice. If you've been through the most horrendous thing, a murder in your family, if you're a victim of rape, if you're someone who's been a victim of armed robbery and you're waiting literally years to get to court, and then those courts, they don't have enough vans for the prisoners to come in, the photocopiers don't work, which delays trials. There are all sorts of examples that people have been contacting me with this week, and I wanted to talk about it properly. Michael Shilliday is a barrister. He's going to be with me in a second, as is Sir Michael Ellis, who's also a barrister and former Attorney General. We'll talk about that, and we'll take your calls, text, tweets and voice notes right up to 1 o'clock when Ian takes over. So stay with us. Plenty still to come here on Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, earlier this week, the Justice Secretary and Deputy Prime Minister and indeed Celebrity Mastermind contestant David Lammy announced that half of all jury trials were to be scrapped. This is his plan to tackle the Crown Court backlog. I would ask a big question about whether that will actually help in terms of the Crown Court backlog being dealt with, because there's so many problems in Crown Courts and Magistrates Courts, and a number of people have been in touch with me this week to just outline the problem, and one of them is Michael Shilladay, who's a barrister I know. We're going to talk in a second to Sir Michael Ellis, who is the former Attorney General, but I want to get the view kind of from the coalface from Michael. First of all, thanks for joining us. Michael, you represent people all the time in all sorts of different courts. Can you just tell me what it's like? Because some of the stories are not really about juries, they're about all sorts of things, about not having prisoners in court because there aren't enough vans to transport them, photocopiers not working. Tell me what it's like in the front line there as you try to represent your clients and get justice.
In about an hour, I'm going to leave here and go to, as it happens, my local Crown Court and do a hearing there this afternoon. That court is fairly notorious for custody trials where the defendant is not on bail, being delayed significantly because the boiler doesn't work and the cells are too cold and prisoners can't be transported from prison to that court. It's not only that court where that is a significant problem. Photocopiers not working is something that happens in all walks of life, but it does slow things down. In fact, the criminal justice system is not very paper-based at all anymore, but there are some things that you must have paper for, and photocopiers not working is one of the many problems. Maidstone Crown Court has or at least used to have a problem with the gents' toilet leaking onto the jury box in one of the courts. The justice budget, the MOJ budget is, in real terms, adjusted for inflation, 20% less now than it was in 2010. The entire court estate, the entire justice budget has been starved of funding for longer than I've been in practice. In 2019, the Crown Court backlog was, I think, about 40,000 cases. The Bar Council expressed concern about that. The senior presiding judge of England and Wales wrote back and said this is a political decision. The then Conservative government had taken the political decision to reduce sitting days in order to keep the Crown Court backlog where it was, because at that stage they were anticipating reduced receipts into the Crown Court. In fact, what happened was 6 months later we had a pandemic and the backlog exploded. The backlog is now twice what it was then. There are courts in London which are currently setting trials for 2030. So the short answer to the question is, are these reforms going to make a dent in the backlog? Is one, probably not, and two, even if they do, it's not going to be for years. I don't think there's any court, I could be wrong, I don't think there's any court in the Southeastern Circuit in the southeast of England and Wales, where trials are currently being listed, certainly bail trials, within a reasonable period. You're talking at least 2027. So what's being proposed is tinkering with ancient rights to trial by jury, sort of on the recommendation of Sir Brian Levison, who incidentally was clearly chosen for a reason. Sir Brian has been expressing his own particular niche, if I may say so, view about the right to trial by jury since at least 2015. His selection for that review wasn't an accident. When in fact there are many things that could be done that will reduce the backlog much quicker.
So give us a few examples.
They range from just releasing the cap on sitting days. Snaresborough Crown Court in East London is one of the biggest criminal trial centres in Europe. I think there's one in Germany that's bigger. It's got 20 courts. The Old Bailey is smaller. I don't think in my entire career I've ever seen all 20 courts sitting with a judge all day.
So we've got a situation then where if you are unfortunate enough, or by your own actions, you're caught up in this system. We have people who, we've got people who are victims of rape. We've got people who have had a murder in the family who are waiting for justice for years because of really quite basic things, Michael.
Yeah, I think would be unusual for a murder trial to be listed that far in advance.
But there are lots of trials that are taking an awfully long period of time.
My professional diary is, it has trials in it in 2028, 2029.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. And there are basic things, but it all comes down, certainly in the short term, to money. There are many other things the government could do to sort this out. What's good for society is terrible for my ability to make money. And the worst thing that the government could do for my ability to make money is actually address the causes of crime.
Okay.
And
that's a whole other discussion we will. And that's a whole other discussion we will perhaps have on a later date. Michael, thank you. That's Michael Shilliday, who's a barrister. I want to go to Sir Michael Ellis now, who is a KC, King's Counsel, a barrister and former Attorney General. Sir Michael, thank you for joining us. Does that ring true with what you have heard, seen and experienced yourself? And what do you think that the government can do to change things? I mean, is getting rid of jury trials going to help this at all?
Well, this is another mastermind decision from David Lammy. Look, the fact is it's not going to affect the backlog. And it is interfering in a very serious way with 800 years of jurisprudence, frankly, of the rights of the people of this country, which were exported to democracies around the world and which remain today as fundamental as they have ever been. We need juries very often to inject common sense into decisions, to look at things with a broad aspect, with a human, if you like, aspect, as opposed to a robotic process where lawyers might take a view that something is worthy of prosecution. Juries will inject common sense. Now, what your previous guest was saying is absolutely right. The pressures on the criminal justice system in this country are serious. They are really serious. In fact, I would say there's an emergency in our criminal justice system. The delays are unconscionable. The prison estate is also falling apart, by the way, because of lack of investment. And this is a 30-year issue. This is not for the last 5 minutes.
I mean, it's a 30-year issue, and your party was in government for 14 years, surely. And I was a special advisor in the Ministry of Justice for 6 months. I mean, all these people, I have my part to play in it as well. We were told time and time again, including by people like Michael Shilliday, who's been on at me for years about this, that literally the fabric of the courts is falling apart.
Yes, look, there are 3 reasons really why there's a backlog. I mean, part of it is due to COVID and what happened to the system there, but the real reasons for the backlog, there are 3 of them. The first is there is a lack of court sitting days. In other words, each day that a Crown Court judge sits with a jury has to be funded, and there's an allocation of sitting days set by the government in order to fund that. And that's expensive. I don't know what the current daily rate for a Crown Court is. The last I heard, it was about £10,000 a day.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
So where we are really is a lack of sitting days. So as your previous guest was eloquently saying, you'll get some court buildings with 20 courts in it, and he's never seen all 20 courts sitting at the same time.
Yes.
I have similar experiences pre-2010, by the way. So that's one issue, the lack of sitting days. Another issue is the dilapidated court estate. That's a generation or more of underfunding so that heating doesn't work and plumbing doesn't work and things don't work that mean that you can't sit in court on that day. That's another reason for delays. And a third reason, which is a bit harder to deal with, is the increased complexity, Peter, of court cases, mostly because of the digital evidence. There's so much more digital evidence now, even on an ordinary burglary. There may be CCTV footage in 10 houses in the street.
Yeah, ring doorbells and putting it all together. Yeah,
all that sort of thing.
It's a complex picture, and you've illustrated it well. Thank you, Sir Michael Ellis, there, barrister himself, King's Counsel and former Attorney General. Appreciate you joining us on the programme. Andy in Cheshire has been in touch and says, here's one for you, Peter. I was a detective for 25 years. I saw so much waste in the justice system. We were 3 days into a trial for a couple of men involved in a series of armed robberies. The prosecuting counsel said to me, make some plans for tomorrow afternoon if you want. We won't be sitting after lunch. Why is that? I said, because the judge and myself are in a 4-ball at a golf club teeing off at 2 p.m, says Andy in Cheshire. Tracy says, the lefty earlier on called the general population thick. Is that why they treat the electorate with such contempt? I think she was referring to James Mathewson there. Stuart says, I bet 99% of all people around the world have said racist things, whether against other tribes or other countries or other cultures or religions, and most of it would have been tongue-in-cheek at the time. And when we grow, we think differently and try to be more intelligent in the way that we talk and think. Neil says, Cardi P, I've heard you questioning the guests all morning about Farage's comments. Can I ask you what you think? If it's proven that he made these comments when he was a child, what is your view? Well, listen, we've all said things. I said things as a child and as a teenager, and I say things, you know, every now and again as an adult that I regret, shouldn't have said, and apologise for from time to time. I'm sure there's things that people have felt aggrieved that I've said in the past. I don't know what I would do if someone said, well, you said this at 13. I don't quite know what I said at 13 or didn't say. There are a lot of people accusing Nigel Farage. He denies those comments, and that's all he said. I mean, that's his view, and well, it's his contention certainly that he didn't say those things. So it's a straightforward he said, she said kind of argument, essentially. No matter what Nigel Farage says, I would argue, Neil, there are people who are just going to say, look, this is the way things are, and he said it or didn't say it, or they're going to believe what they want to believe. We can't know exactly what Nigel Farage said 50 years ago. If he said things that were anti-Semitic, and he denies this, but if he did, well, yeah, of course he should apologise. Anti-Semitism is dreadful. It's an awful, awful scourge. It's racism. It's a horrible thing. But he denies that, so there's really nowhere else to go apart from the fact that some people say that he said it and he denies that he didn't. So I suppose that's my view on it. Let's find out what Mike in South Wales thinks about this. Mike, you're on the air. What would you like to say?
Yeah, hello, Peter.
Hi there.
It's just that Nigel Farage has been accused of these things, saying that I don't know how many years ago he's supposed to have said it. But it's what you've got to remember, that this country was a different place 50 years ago. You know, on the TV, you had the black and white minstrel show. You had Till Death Us Do Part. You know, lots of programs.
And he's made those points, Mike. But at no point saying Hitler was right was an acceptable thing to say. It doesn't matter if it's today, tomorrow, or 50 years ago.
No, I'm not saying. But you've got to put things into context. But there's
no. But what I'm saying, I totally get your point in the black and white minstrel show and those very valid points that Nigel Farage has made.
Yeah.
But my point is that there is no context in which saying Hitler was right is an acceptable thing, is an acceptable view to have.
Yeah, all right then. Well, I'll refer to a quote from the Bible. It's Corinthians 1, 13, 11. And it says, when I was a child, I spoke as a child. I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. Now, that's from the Bible. Like, that you can't get more clearer than that. When people are young, they say things.
So why should Nigel Farage not say, well, he denies that he said them, but if there's any evidence and all these people are saying, I mean, why does he not just say, I'll meet these people, we'll thrash it out, and if I've something to apologise for, I'll apologise for. In fairness, he has largely said that he wants to apologise if he offended anybody by what he said, but he said what he said was banter back then, Mike.
Yeah. Oh, okay. You can say, what he said was banter, whatever. But it's crazy. This country's gone crazy. You're more concerned about what somebody said 50 years ago than, you know, you've got our government, which is ruining this country, and they get a.
Well, I think we're going to have both discussions, Mike. But you make some really good points there, and thank you for them. We're going to talk to Fiona in just a second. There are other people who will talk to. If you want to get your call in between now and 1 o'clock, or indeed for Ian Collins, it's 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you to Jason in the Lake District, who says Question Time showed once again that it's biased to his core and was a set-up gotcha farce against Zia, who handled them very well. Jason also thinks we should be better about this Farage nonsense. Why are you giving it the amount of airtime that you are? Jason, it's a political controversy that people are talking about. We have Holocaust survivors who are accusing him of saying things which he denies. I want to talk to Brian in Blackpool about that. He's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. You're very welcome to the programme. Brian, what would you like to say?
Good afternoon, Peter. I hope you enjoyed your holiday because you seem to need it.
Thank you.
Well, I'm 84 years of age. I lived on a kibbutz in Israel with Holocaust survivors, actually from the ship Exodus.
Okay.
We went to the first opening of Yad Vashem, and the first thing you see there at that time was a word, evidence. No evidence for Farage at all.
It's a straight he said, she said. He denies it.
Yeah, well, I have taken in my London taxi Nigel Farage twice. Once with one of your co-presenters, Alex.
Okay.
I was wearing a Yavak Campbell, the hat piece, and he asked what it was, and I explained. You can quickly tell if somebody has got an anti-Semitic bent or not. I can assure you, Nigel Farage doesn't have it.
Yeah.
I doubt very much if he had ever said this. Now, I did a little bit of teaching at one time. School children mostly never remember what they did the day before, let alone 50 years ago.
Yeah. Well, listen, thank you, Brian, and I think a lot of people, Jason actually in the Lake District making that point as well, something a man might have said when he was at school, why are we even debating it? But it is a matter of political debate, and I think, you know, there's not much more that perhaps can be said after this, that he simply denies it. He talked about it yesterday, but still the accusations come, including from Holocaust survivors. Fiona's in London and has a thought on this. Fiona, what would you like to say? You're very welcome to the programme.
Hi, good morning or afternoon now.
Hi there.
Firstly, I'd like to say, you know, anti-Semitism is wrong and so is racism. However, I just find it absolutely incredible that we're still paying lip service to people that reckon that he said this 50 years ago. I mean, how on earth can this ever be proven? If he said he didn't say it, why is a continued witch hunt?
Yeah, and it can't be. They can't prove it. You know, the fact is, exactly. and people will believe what they want to believe, won't they?
Oh, totally. I mean, has anyone actually investigated the people who are making these allegations to see if they're actually associated with, you know, maybe the BBC, maybe people who?
Well, I don't want to impugn Holocaust survivors. If they have, no. I think they've got a legitimate point to at least ask the question, and that's what we're doing. Yeah. Absolutely,
and I totally agree with you there. And as I said earlier, anti-Semitism is disgusting. It shouldn't be part of our nature.
Totally agree with you, Fiona, and thank you for your comments. We're just going to move on because Ian Collins is in the studio, but Fiona, I think you got your point across and I appreciate it, and I appreciate that even Jason, you know, disagrees with me on this, and that's fine, but I do think it is something we should talk about. Ian Collins is here.
Don't blame me for having to move on. We've got to move on because Ian's here.
Well, yeah, I just think
it's the law of the earth.
Well, it's nice to have a little chat.
It's also an Ofcom directive now that,
Is it?
You know, if you don't get 2 minutes before, then
that's it.
You're in trouble.
You're in trouble.
Big trouble.
Yeah. Well, the good news is there aren't any other presenters that I could name who don't come in on time and, you know, jeopardise the end of the programme when you're thinking, hold on, am I actually going to take a few more callers, take a few more texts?
It's a weird moment, isn't it, in our world?
Is this person going to come in or are they not? You know, I can't think of a single person, and I'm sure Kevin O'Sullivan can't either, who fulfills that description.
If people could see the sort of to-ing and fro-ing in the sort of 30 seconds to a minute before these handovers, is anyone coming in? Is anyone coming in? Where are they? Where are they? Are they coming in?
Have you got your microphone on?
Then they've
How's it going, Lou?
yeah. Where is he? Where, where's Alex? She should be here somewhere. She's cooking her dinner. You know, I don't know. All sorts of things going on. We're going to be talking about Nigel Farage, the BBC. Have the BBC got a case to answer here? I think is. I mean, the question that came from the Today presenter was horrendous, frankly, to Farage. Of course, the other side of that story is, has Nigel Farage got something to answer in terms of when he was at school? This, of course, was all about 50 years ago. I think that's very relevant to the context of anything that you're talking about. Do we view people?
But there's no context
today
where saying Hitler was right is fine.
Yeah, nobody
whether 50 years ago or not.
Yeah, exactly. And there's no way anybody. I mean, it was said earlier today. You know, the most Israeli-friendly party is Reform UK. I mean, there's no doubt about that. Led by Nigel Farage. So, and lots of things, of course, can happen at school. It doesn't mean the people that might be on the receiving end of things don't forget it. And I understand that, because you might feel, you know, God,